Let me be clear before start. These are not manipulative tactics meant to deceive or harm others. When used with good intentions and respect for other people, these principles simply help you communicate more effectively and understand human nature more deeply. They work because they tap into fundamental aspects of how our brains process information and how we navigate social situations. Throughout this exploration, we will examine 22 powerful psychological principles. Each one reveals something fascinating about human nature. Some will seem almost magical in their effectiveness. Others will feel familiar, like something you have intuitively known but never quite put into words. All of them, however, are grounded in real psychological research and have been tested countless times in real-world situations. So let us begin this journey into the hidden architecture of human interaction. Prepare to see your conversations, your relationships, and even yourself in a completely new light: the power of silence. Imagine you are in a conversation. You ask someone a question and they give you a brief answer. Most people would immediately respond, perhaps asking another question or sharing their own thoughts. But what if you did something different? What if you simply stayed quiet, maintaining eye contact, waiting patiently for more? Something remarkable would likely happen. The other person, feeling the weight of that silence, would almost certainly start talking again. They would elaborate, add details, share thoughts they had not planned to reveal. This is the power of silence, and it is one of the most underestimated tools in human communication. Silence creates psychological discomfort. We are social creatures, wired to connect and communicate. When a gap appears in conversation, our brains interpret it as something wrong, something that needs fixing. This discomfort is so powerful that most people will rush to fill the void, often revealing far more than they originally intended. Think about how this works in practice. When you are gathering information, silence becomes your ally. You ask a question and then simply wait. The person answers. You nod slightly but say nothing. In that moment of quiet expectation, they often realize their first answer was incomplete. They start adding context, explaining their reasoning, sharing the real story behind their initial response. You learn so much more than you would have if you had jumped in with another question. In negotiations, silence is even more powerful. Imagine you make an offer and then stop talking completely. The other person might initially try to wait you out, but the silence eventually becomes unbearable for them too. They start talking, and when they do, they often reveal their constraints, their concerns, their bottom line. They might even improve their own offer just to break the uncomfortable quiet. This principle works in personal conversations too. When someone is sharing something emotional or difficult, your instinct might be to immediately respond with advice or reassurance. But if you can sit with the silence for a moment, something deeper happens. The person continues talking, moving past the surface level into more vulnerable, authentic sharing. They reflect more deeply on their own feelings. The conversation reaches a level of intimacy that would have been impossible if you had rushed to fill every pause. Of course, using silence effectively requires practice and confidence. It feels unnatural at first. Your mind screams at you to say something, anything, to resolve the awkwardness. But if you can push through that discomfort, you will discover that silence is not empty. It is full of possibility, pregnant with meaning, rich with potential for deeper understanding. The key is to use silence purposefully, not just letting awkward gaps appear randomly in conversation. After asking a question, after making a point, after someone gives what seems like an incomplete answer, that is when you employ strategic silence. You maintain gentle eye contact, perhaps nod slightly to show you are listening, and simply wait. Your body language says you are comfortable, that you expect more, that you are ready to hear whatever comes next. What makes this work is that silence shifts the psychological pressure from you to the other person. They become responsible for moving the conversation forward. And because humans are so uncomfortable with conversational voids, they almost always do. They elaborate, they reveal, they share, and you learn. Mirroring. Have you ever noticed that when you are talking with someone you really like and trust, you naturally start to move in similar ways? You both lean forward at the same time. You cross your legs in the same direction. You speak at similar speeds. This is not coincidence. This is mirroring. And it is one of the most powerful subconscious signals of rapport and connection between human beings. Mirroring happens naturally when we feel aligned with someone. But here is the fascinating part. You can also create that sense of alignment by deliberately, subtly mirroring the other person. When done skillfully and naturally, this technique builds trust and rapport without the other person even realizing what is happening. The psychology behind mirroring is straightforward. Our brains are wired to favor similarity. We trust people who seem like us. We feel comfortable with people who move through the world in similar ways. When someone mirrors our body language, speech patterns, or energy level, our subconscious mind registers them as safe, as similar, as someone we can trust. We feel understood without quite knowing why. Let me be very clear about how to use this technique ethically and effectively. Mirroring must be subtle and natural. If it is obvious or exaggerated, it becomes mockery, and the other person will feel uncomfortable or even offended. The goal is not to become a mirror image of everything they do. Instead, you are looking for a few key elements to subtly align with. Start with posture. If someone is leaning forward, you gradually lean forward too, not immediately, but after a few moments. If they are sitting back in a relaxed position, you ease into a similar stance. This creates a visual harmony that the subconscious mind finds pleasing. Then consider gestures. If someone talks with their hands, you might incorporate slightly more hand gestures into your own speech. If they are more still and contained, you dial back your own physical expression. Again, this is not about copying every movement. It is about matching their general energy and style of expression. Speech patterns offer another opportunity for mirroring. Listen to their pace. Are they speaking quickly with high energy or slowly with deliberate pauses? Are they using short, punchy sentences or longer, more elaborate explanations? As you respond, naturally adjust your own speech to somewhat match their rhythm and style. If they speak softly, lower your volume a bit. If they are animated and loud, bring slightly more energy to your voice. Even word choice matters. If someone uses technical language, matching that vocabulary shows you are on their level. If they speak in simple, everyday terms, adjusting your language to match creates a sense of shared understanding. This does not mean dumbing down or talking down to anyone. It means meeting them in their communication style, making it easier for them to receive and process what you are saying. The applications of mirroring are vast. In job interviews, subtly mirroring the interviewer can create an instant sense of fit and compatibility. They subconsciously feel you would blend well with the team. In sales meetings, mirroring builds the trust necessary for someone to feel comfortable making a purchase. In difficult conversations, mirroring can reduce tension by signaling that you are trying to understand their perspective. One of the most powerful uses of mirroring is in cross-cultural or high-stakes negotiations. When tensions are high or differences are pronounced, the ability to find points of similarity becomes crucial. By mirroring certain aspects of the other person's communication style, you create bridges of connection that transcend other differences. However, a word of caution is essential. Mirroring loses all its power if it becomes obvious or feels manipulative. If someone catches you clearly copying their movements or speech, trust evaporates instantly. The key is subtlety, naturalness, and genuine interest in the other person. You are not pretending to be like them. You are finding the real ways in which you can genuinely align and connect. Think of mirroring as tuning an instrument to match another. You are not changing who you are. You are finding the harmonies that already exist between you and bringing them to the foreground. When done with respect and authenticity, mirroring becomes less of a technique and more of a natural expression of empathy and connection. The Benjamin Franklin effect. Here is something that seems completely backwards at first glance. If you want someone to like you more, you should ask them for a favor. Not offer them a favor, but ask them to do something for you. This seems to contradict everything we think we know about building relationships. Surely helping others makes them like us, right? Well, yes, but the reverse is even more powerful, and it is backed by fascinating psychological research. This principle is named after Benjamin Franklin, who discovered it through his own experience. Franklin had a rival in the Pennsylvania legislature who disliked him intensely. Rather than trying to win the man over with kindness or favors, Franklin took a different approach. He asked the man to lend him a rare book from his library. The rival, somewhat surprised, agreed. Franklin returned the book promptly with a warm thank you note. From that point forward, the rival became one of Franklin's closest political allies. What happened? The answer lies in how our minds work. When we do a favor for someone, our brain needs to make sense of that action. We ask ourselves, consciously or unconsciously, why we would help this person. The easiest answer, the one that requires the least mental effort, is simply this: I must like them. Otherwise, Why would I do them a favor? This is cognitive dissonance in action. Our brains seek consistency between our actions and our beliefs. If our actions suggest we like someone, such as doing them a favor, our beliefs adjust to match. We start to see them more favorably. We notice their positive qualities. We become more invested in the relationship. There is another psychological principle at work here too, sometimes called the IKEA effect. We value things more when we have invested effort in them. Think about furniture you assembled yourself versus furniture that came fully assembled. You probably feel more attached to the pieces you built, even if they are objectively identical. The same applies to relationships. When you invest effort in helping someone, you become more invested in that person. You have put work into the relationship, so your mind values it more highly. The key to using this principle effectively is in how you ask. The favor should be small enough that the person can easily say yes, but meaningful enough that they actually have to make an effort. Asking to borrow a book, as Franklin did, is perfect. Asking for advice is another excellent option. Asking someone to introduce you to a contact or to share their expertise on a topic also works beautifully. What makes asking for advice particularly powerful is that it also flatters the person. You are essentially saying, I value your knowledge and judgment enough to seek your guidance. This creates a double benefit. They feel good about being seen as knowledgeable, and then they rationalize that they must like you since they are taking time to help you. In professional settings, this principle can transform relationships. Imagine you have a coworker who seems indifferent or even slightly hostile. Instead of trying to win them over with compliments or offers of help, ask them for something. Maybe they have expertise in a software program you are struggling with. Maybe they know the history of a project you are starting. Frame your request with genuine respect for their knowledge and watch how the dynamic shifts. In sales and business, this principle explains why free trials and samples work so well. You might think companies give away products to showcase their quality, and that is partially true. But there is a deeper psychological mechanism at work. When someone invests time in learning your software or trying your product, they become more invested in it. They start to see its value more clearly because acknowledging that value justifies the effort they have put in. The same principle works in leadership and team building. When you delegate tasks to team members, you are not just distributing work, you are investing them in the outcome. They put effort into the task, and that effort makes them care more about the result. They become more committed to the project and, by extension, more aligned with you as a leader. Of course, this principle has its limits and requires ethical application. You cannot constantly ask for favors without ever reciprocating. That would be exploitation, not relationship building. The goal is to create an initial opening, a first point of connection that shifts someone's perception. After that, the relationship should develop naturally with mutual give and take. Also, your request must be genuine. If someone senses you are asking for a favor purely as a manipulation tactic, the entire effect reverses. They will see through the technique and trust you even less than before. The Benjamin Franklin effect works precisely because the favor represents a real interaction, a genuine moment of connection where one person helps another. Think of this principle as a door opener. In the early stages of a relationship, when someone is neutral or uncertain about you, a small favor creates a foothold. It gives them a reason to reevaluate their initial impression. It creates a small investment that their mind wants to justify and protect. From there, if you are genuine and treat them with respect, the relationship can develop naturally into something much stronger. Strategic nodding. Human communication is far more than just words. In fact, studies suggest that the majority of communication happens non-verbally, through body language, facial expressions, and physical gestures. One of the most powerful of these non-verbal cues is the simple act of nodding. When used strategically, nodding can dramatically increase your persuasiveness and ability to build agreement. The psychology here is rooted in mirror neurons and social conditioning. From early childhood, we learn to associate nodding with agreement and positivity. When someone nods at us, we feel encouraged, validated, understood. Our brains are wired to recognize and respond to this cue. But here is where it gets really interesting. When you nod while you are speaking, you actually increase the likelihood that your listener will agree with what you are saying. This happens through a fascinating subconscious process. As you speak and nod, the person listening tends to subtly mirror your movement. They might not even realize they are doing it, but they start nodding along with you. And once they are physically nodding, their brain starts to associate that physical gesture with agreement. The physical act of nodding triggers the mental state of agreeing. Their mind essentially says, I am nodding, so I must be in agreement with what this person is saying. This might sound almost too simple to be true, but the research is clear, and anyone who has used this technique strategically can attest to its power. Politicians and successful public speakers have used this for decades. Watch any effective presenter, and you will notice they nod frequently while making key points. They are not just expressing their own certainty, they are physically cueing the audience to agree. In one-on-one conversations, strategic nodding serves multiple purposes. First, it demonstrates confidence. When you nod while stating something, you signal absolute certainty in what you are saying. This confidence is contagious. Second, it creates a rhythm of agreement in the conversation. The other person starts nodding along, and this physical harmony creates psychological harmony. They feel more aligned with you, more open to your perspective. In negotiations, strategic nodding becomes especially powerful. When you make a proposal or state your position, nodding as you speak increases the chances that the other party will see it as reasonable. You are not just telling them your idea is good, you are physically modeling agreement with it, and their mirror neurons encourage them to join you in that agreement. Customer service and sales professionals also benefit enormously from understanding this principle. When addressing a customer's concerns or presenting a solution, nodding while you speak helps the customer feel heard and increases their openness to your proposed resolution. The nodding says, yes, this is right, this makes sense, this is the solution we both agree on. The technique even works in conflict resolution and de-escalation. When someone is upset or agitated, nodding slowly and calmly while acknowledging their concerns serves multiple functions. It shows you are listening and understanding. It physically demonstrates empathy, and it subtly encourages them to calm down as the slow, measured nodding pace influences their own emotional state. However, like all psychological techniques, strategic nodding must be used authentically and appropriately. Nodding constantly like a bobblehead doll will make you look foolish or insincere. The nods should be measured, deliberate, and timed to emphasize key points. Think of it as punctuation in your physical communication, marking the important moments. Also, your nodding should match the content of what you are saying. If you are discussing something serious or somber, gentle, slow nods are appropriate. If you are excited and enthusiastic, more energetic nodding matches that tone. The physical gesture should always feel congruent with the message. One powerful variation is the expectant nod, where you ask a question and then immediately start nodding, as if you already know the answer will be yes. This is particularly effective for simple confirmations or when seeking agreement on something relatively straightforward. The person you're asking sees your confident nod and often mirrors it automatically, their yes coming almost before they have consciously processed the question. Another application is in building engagement during presentations or group discussions. When you want to check if people are following along or understanding your points, you can nod while asking, does that make sense? Or are we all on the same page? The nodding physically cues people to nod back, signaling their understanding and keeping them engaged. The key to mastering strategic nodding is awareness and practice. Start paying attention to your own nodding patterns and those of effective communicators around you. Notice when nodding happens naturally and when it seems forced. Experiment with incorporating more deliberate nods during important conversations, presentations, or negotiations. Over time, it will become a natural part of your communication repertoire, subtly enhancing your persuasiveness without feeling manipulative or false. Remember, the goal is not to trick people into agreeing with bad ideas. The goal is to create an environment where good ideas can be received more openly, where communication flows more smoothly, and where agreement becomes easier to reach. Strategic nodding is simply removing some of the friction that naturally exists in communication, making it easier for people to connect with you and your message. The foot in the door technique. Human beings have a deep psychological need for consistency. Once we commit to something, even something small, we feel internal pressure to act in ways that align with that initial commitment. This tendency is so powerful that it can be used to dramatically increase the likelihood that someone will agree to larger requests. This is the foot in the door technique, and it is one of the most well-researched principles in social psychology. The name comes from the old-fashioned door-to-door salesman who knew that if he could just get his foot in the door, preventing it from closing, he had a much better chance of eventually making a sale. The modern version is more subtle, but operates on the same principle. Start with a small request that almost anyone would agree to, and then follow up with a larger request that is your true goal. The classic research demonstrating this effect involved homeowners and safe driving signs. Researchers first went to neighborhoods and asked people if they would put a small safe driving sticker in their window. Most people agreed because it was a tiny commitment that supported a good cause. A few weeks later, the researchers returned and asked if these same homeowners would now put a large, rather ugly safe driving sign in their front yards. An astonishingly high percentage agreed, far more than in neighborhoods where no initial small request had been made. What happened? The small initial commitment changed how these people saw themselves. They were now people who supported safe driving publicly. When the larger request came, saying no would create cognitive dissonance. It would be inconsistent with their new self-image. So they said yes to the big, inconvenient request to maintain consistency with their earlier small commitment. This principle works across countless situations. In sales, it explains why free trials are so effective. Getting someone to try your product for free is a small commitment, but once they invest time in setting it up and learning to use it, they have committed. When the trial period ends, saying no to purchasing means admitting that all that invested time and effort was wasted. It is often psychologically easier to just buy the product. In charity and fundraising, the foot in the door technique is incredibly effective. Organizations often start by asking people to sign a petition or wear a ribbon supporting a cause. These are tiny commitments that cost nothing, but they change how people see themselves. They become supporters of this cause. When the follow-up request for a donation comes, they are far more likely to give because it aligns with this new identity they have adopted. In the workplace, smart managers and leaders use this principle constantly, often without even realizing it. When you want someone to take on a significant project, you do not start by dumping the entire thing on their desk. Instead, you begin with a small piece. You ask them to just review a document or attend one meeting. Once they have made that initial commitment, they are psychologically invested. The next request, which might be larger, feels like a natural continuation rather than a new burden. Parenting also benefits from understanding this principle. If you want your child to clean their entire room, starting with that large request often leads to resistance and overwhelm. But if you start by asking them to just put their shoes away or make their bed, you get that initial commitment. Once they have started cleaning, asking them to continue feels less daunting. They have already broken through the initial resistance, and consistency drives them to continue. The technique works because of several interconnected psychological mechanisms. First, there is the self-perception aspect. After agreeing to the small request, people genuinely start to see themselves differently. They update their internal narrative about who they are. If I agreed to help with this, I must be a helpful person. If I sign that petition, I must care about this issue. Second, there is the commitment and consistency principle. Humans are wired to be consistent. Inconsistency creates psychological discomfort. Once we have taken a position or made a commitment, reversing course feels uncomfortable, even when the original commitment was tiny and the new request is much larger. Third, there is momentum. Getting started is often the hardest part of any task or decision. Once movement has begun, continuing feels easier than stopping. The foot in the door technique harnesses this momentum, using a small initial action to overcome inertia and create forward movement. However, for this technique to work ethically and effectively, certain conditions must be met. The initial request must be truly small and non-threatening. If people sense that you are trying to manipulate them with an obviously calculated series of escalating requests, the technique backfires. They become defensive and resistant. The requests must also feel genuinely connected. If you ask someone to sign a petition about environmental protection and then immediately follow up with a request to buy your unrelated product, the connection is broken. But if the follow-up request is to donate to an environmental organization, the connection feels natural and the technique works. Timing matters too. The follow-up request should come after enough time has passed for the initial commitment to feel real and integrated into the person's self-concept, but not so long that the connection between the two requests feels arbitrary. Usually this means anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, depending on the context. The ethical use of this principle requires that you are leading people towards something genuinely beneficial, not exploiting their psychological tendencies for your own gain at their expense. When a charity uses this technique to increase donations for a worthy cause, that is ethical application. When a scammer uses it to gradually extract money from vulnerable people, that is exploitation. One powerful variation of this technique is the lowball approach, though it operates somewhat differently. In lowballing, you get someone to commit to something at one price or with one set of conditions, and then reveal that the actual cost or conditions are slightly worse. Because they have already committed, many people stick with the decision despite the changed circumstances. Car dealerships sometimes use this, getting a customer to commit to a purchase and then revealing additional fees. While this works psychologically, it is ethically questionable and can damage long-term trust. A more positive application is in goal setting and personal development. If you want to establish a new habit, starting with an absurdly small version of that habit uses the foot in the door technique on yourself. Want to start exercising? Begin by committing to just one push-up per day. This tiny commitment changes your self-concept. You become someone who exercises daily. From there, expanding to a full workout becomes much easier. In team building and organizational change, this principle is invaluable. Major changes often face resistance simply because they are large and unfamiliar. But if you can break that change into small initial steps and get people to commit to just the first tiny piece, you create momentum. Each small success builds commitment to the larger goal. The key to mastering this technique is understanding that you are not tricking anyone. You are working with natural human psychology to make decisions and actions feel more comfortable and aligned. When done with respect and genuine value for all parties, the foot in the door technique simply makes it easier for people to say yes to things that are genuinely good for them or aligned with their values. Using someone's name, the most personal word. There is one word in any language that has more power over an individual than any other. It is not a magic incantation or a secret password. It is simply their own name. The human brain responds to hearing one's own name in a uniquely powerful way. Understanding and using this fact strategically can dramatically improve your communication and relationship building. Neuroscience research has shown that hearing your own name activates specific regions of the brain associated with self-awareness and personal identity. Even in a crowded, noisy environment where you are not consciously listening to surrounding conversations, your brain will pick out your name with remarkable reliability. This is sometimes called the cocktail party effect, and it demonstrates just how deeply attuned we are to this most personal of words. When someone uses your name in conversation, several things happen psychologically. First, it captures your attention immediately and completely. Your focus shifts entirely to the person speaking. Second, it makes you feel valued and recognized. You are not just another person in the crowd. You are you, an individual worthy of personal acknowledgement. Third, it creates a sense of intimacy and connection, even in brief interactions. The key to using names effectively is in how and when you deploy them. The first mention should come early in the conversation, ideally when greeting someone. Instead of just saying hello or hi, say hello Sarah, or good morning Michael. This immediately personalizes the interaction and signals that you see them as an individual, not just another face. Throughout the conversation, strategic use of someone's name reinforces connection and directs attention. If you are making an important point, beginning with their name ensures they are fully focused. Sarah, I want to make sure you understand this next part. The name acts as a verbal tap on the shoulder, bringing their full attention to what follows. In group settings, using someone's name serves an additional function. It clearly directs your comment or question to that specific person, eliminating ambiguity and making them feel included and important. In a meeting with multiple people, saying, David, what is your take on this proposal? Does more than just get David's input. It makes David feel valued and ensures everyone knows you want his specific perspective. Customer service and sales benefit enormously from the strategic use of names. When a customer service representative uses your name naturally throughout the interaction, the experience feels more personal and less transactional. You feel like you are being helped by a human who sees you as an individual, not processed by a system that sees you as case number 7412. In sales, using a prospect's name builds rapport quickly. It makes the sales conversation feel less like a pitch and more like a genuine interaction between two people. The prospect is more likely to listen, more likely to trust, and ultimately more likely to buy because they feel seen and valued as an individual. Leadership and management also benefit from this principle. A leader who knows and uses team members' names makes each person feel recognized and important. This is especially powerful in larger organizations where employees can easily feel anonymous. When the boss knows your name and uses it naturally, you feel more connected to the organization and more valued as a contributor. However, like all communication techniques, using names requires balance and authenticity. Overusing someone's name can feel manipulative or creepy. If you say their name in every sentence, it stops feeling natural and starts feeling calculated. The sweet spot is usually 2 to 4 times in a conversation of moderate length, strategically placed at key moments. The tone and context matter too. If you are delivering bad news or criticism, using someone's name can soften the blow and maintain connection, but it must be done carefully. John, I need to talk to you about a concern I have about the project. This is very different from the aggressive John, said in a tone of frustration or anger, which can feel like a parent scolding a child. Cultural considerations are important as well. In some cultures, using first names immediately might be considered overly familiar or disrespectful. In more formal business cultures, titles and last names are expected initially, with first names only used after a relationship has been established. Being attuned to these norms prevents awkwardness and shows cultural awareness. One particularly powerful application is remembering and using someone's name when you meet them again after a gap. If you meet someone briefly and then encounter them again weeks or months later, greeting them by name creates an outsized positive impression. It signals that they mattered enough for you to remember them. Most people forget names quickly, so those who remember stand out dramatically. If you struggle with remembering names, and many people do, there are strategies to help. Repeat the name immediately when you hear it. So nice to meet you, Jennifer. This reinforces it in your memory. Use the name several times in that first conversation. This creates multiple memory touchpoints. Create an association, linking the name to something visual or memorable about the person. These techniques take practice but dramatically improve name retention. In written communication, especially email, using someone's name matters too. Beginning an email with "Hi Marcus" or "Good afternoon Dr. Chen" personalizes the message immediately. It signals that this is not a mass email or automated message, but a personal communication meant specifically for them. This small touch increases the likelihood that your email will be read carefully and responded to promptly. The power of names extends beyond just first names. Using someone's preferred name or nickname shows even greater attention and respect. If someone introduces themselves as Chris, but you insist on calling them Christopher, you are missing an opportunity to connect. Pay attention to how people introduce themselves and honor their preference. Similarly, correctly pronouncing someone's name, especially if it is unfamiliar to you, shows respect and care. If you are unsure, it is far better to ask how to pronounce it correctly than to guess and get it wrong repeatedly. Most people appreciate the effort and the acknowledgement that their name matters. In teaching and mentoring contexts, using students' names creates a more engaged, personal learning environment. Students pay more attention when they know the teacher knows who they are. They feel more comfortable asking questions and participating because they have been recognized as individuals, not just one face in a crowd of many. The principle also works in reverse. Getting people to use your name creates familiarity and connection. When you introduce yourself, say your name clearly. In ongoing interactions, if people are not using your name, you can gently encourage it. "I prefer if you call me Alex, rather than the more formal Alexander." This gives people permission to use your name and establishes a friendlier tone. Understanding the power of names transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for genuine connection. It costs nothing. It takes only a moment of attention and intention, yet it communicates value, recognition, and respect in a way that few other communication strategies can match. In a world where people increasingly feel unseen and anonymous, the simple act of using someone's name becomes a small but meaningful gift of acknowledgement and respect. Paraphrasing. Communication is not just about speaking. In fact, being heard and understood is often more important to people than anything else in an interaction. This is where paraphrasing, also called active listening, becomes one of the most powerful tools in your communication arsenal. When you paraphrase what someone has said, restating their thoughts in your own words, you accomplish multiple goals simultaneously. First, you demonstrate that you were genuinely listening. In a world of distractions where most people are only half present in conversations, truly listening stands out dramatically. When you can accurately restate what someone just said, they know you were not just waiting for your turn to talk. You were actually absorbing and processing their words. Second, paraphrasing creates an opportunity to check your understanding. Often, we think we know what someone meant, but we are actually interpreting their words through our own filters and biases. By restating their point and asking for confirmation, you catch misunderstandings before they cause problems. So if I am hearing you correctly, you are concerned about the timeline more than the budget. Is that right? This simple check prevents countless arguments and mistakes. Third, and perhaps most importantly, paraphrasing makes people feel heard and validated. Think about how it feels when someone truly understands what you are trying to communicate, especially about something emotional or complex. There is a sense of relief, of connection, of being truly seen. This feeling builds trust and openness faster than almost anything else you can do in a conversation. The technique is straightforward in concept, but requires practice to execute naturally. After someone shares something, especially something important or emotional, you pause and then restate the essence of what they said in your own words. You do not parrot back their exact phrases, which would sound robotic and insincere. Instead, you capture the meaning and reflect it back. For example, if someone says, "I have been working so hard on this project, and I feel like nobody even notices or cares about the effort I'm putting in," a good paraphrase might be, "It sounds like you are feeling underappreciated and frustrated that your hard work is going unrecognized." This captures the emotional content and the core concern without just repeating their words. In conflict resolution, paraphrasing is absolutely essential. When tensions are high and emotions are running hot, people often feel unheard. This feeling of not being understood escalates the conflict. But when you can accurately paraphrase someone's position, especially one you disagree with, it de-escalates immediately. They feel understood, which reduces their need to keep arguing or explaining. Even if you still disagree, they know their perspective has been truly heard and considered. Imagine a heated discussion about a business decision. One party feels strongly that the company should invest in new technology, while the other wants to focus on hiring more staff. Instead of immediately arguing your point, you paraphrase theirs. You are saying that without more people, we cannot handle the increased workload, and new technology will not solve that fundamental capacity issue. Is that the core of your concern? Suddenly the dynamic shifts. They feel heard. The conversation becomes collaborative rather than combative. In customer service, paraphrasing transforms interactions. When a customer is upset, they want to know their complaint is understood. Before jumping to solutions, paraphrase their issue. "If I understand correctly, your order arrived late and several items were damaged, and when you called last week, you did not receive a clear answer about a replacement. Is that right?" This simple act of reflection often reduces anger immediately. The customer feels validated, and you ensure you are solving the right problem. Therapeutic and counseling contexts rely heavily on paraphrasing. Therapists use this technique constantly to help clients feel understood and to help clients clarify their own thoughts and feelings. When someone hears their confused thoughts reflected back clearly, it often creates moments of insight and clarity. "Oh yes, that is exactly what I am feeling. I did not even realize that was the core issue until I heard you say it back." In leadership and management, paraphrasing ensures alignment and prevents misunderstandings. When a team member brings you a complex issue or proposal, paraphrasing it back to them serves multiple purposes. It confirms your understanding. It makes them feel heard and valued, and it gives them a chance to clarify or correct anything you misunderstood. So, your proposal is to shift the project timeline back by 2 weeks to allow for more thorough testing, which might delay launch, but would reduce the risk of bugs affecting customer experience. Do I have that right? The technique also works powerfully in teaching and mentoring. When a student or mentee is struggling with a concept, paraphrasing what they are saying helps identify exactly where the confusion lies. It sounds like you understand the basic concept, but you are not sure how to apply it in this specific situation. Is that where you are stuck? This focused understanding allows you to provide much more targeted and helpful guidance. One subtle but important aspect of effective paraphrasing is including the emotional content, not just the factual content. If someone is telling you about a problem and they sound frustrated, your paraphrase should acknowledge that emotion. This is frustrating for you because you have tried multiple solutions and nothing has worked. The emotional validation is often even more important than the factual reflection. However, paraphrasing requires genuine engagement. If you are just mechanically restating what someone said without real understanding or care, it will feel hollow and manipulative. The technique works precisely because it demonstrates genuine listening and genuine effort to understand. If your heart is not in it, people will sense that, and the technique backfires. Timing matters too. You do not need to paraphrase every single thing someone says. That would make conversation tedious and unnatural. Instead, you paraphrase at key moments. When someone has explained something complex, when emotions are running high, when a misunderstanding could have serious consequences, when you need to show someone they are truly heard. These are the moments to deploy this powerful tool. Practicing paraphrasing improves your overall listening skills. When you know you will need to restate what someone said, you listen more carefully. You focus on understanding rather than just waiting to respond. Over time, this makes you a genuinely better listener, which improves every relationship and interaction in your life. The beautiful thing about paraphrasing is that it slows down communication in a helpful way. In our fast-paced world, conversations often become two people taking turns talking without really connecting. Paraphrasing creates a beat, a pause for genuine understanding. It transforms communication from parallel monologues into true dialogue. And in that dialogue, real connection, real problem-solving, and real understanding become possible. The pause in humor and storytelling. Comedy is said to be all about timing, but this principle extends far beyond humor. The strategic use of pauses in any kind of communication, whether you are telling a joke, delivering a presentation, or having a serious conversation, dramatically increases impact and engagement. Understanding how and when to pause transforms you from someone who just conveys information into someone who truly commands attention and creates memorable moments. In comedy, the pause works by creating tension and giving the audience time to process. When a comedian delivers a setup and then pauses before the punchline, something happens in that silence. The audience's minds race ahead, trying to predict where the joke is going. Then the punchline lands, often in an unexpected direction, and the release of that tension becomes laughter. Without the pause, the joke rushes past, and much of the impact is lost. Think about the greatest comedians you have ever watched. They are masters of the pause. They say something and then they wait. The silence feels almost uncomfortable for a moment. Then they deliver the punchline and the room erupts. That pause was not wasted time. It was the very thing that made the joke work. It built anticipation, created space for the audience to engage mentally, and then amplified the impact of the punchline. But this principle works in contexts far beyond comedy. In public speaking and presentations, strategic pauses make you appear more confident and in control. A nervous speaker rushes through their material, filling every second with words, terrified of silence. A confident speaker pauses deliberately. They make a key point and then they stop talking. They let that point sink in. They let the audience absorb it. The pause says, "This matters. Pay attention. Think about what I just said." These pauses also give you time to breathe, to think, to check your audience's response. They create natural breaks in the flow that make your presentation easier to follow. Instead of an overwhelming stream of information, you create a rhythm, a pattern of speech and silence that the human brain processes much more easily. In storytelling, pauses create drama and suspense. When you are telling a story and you reach a crucial moment, pausing before revealing what happened next keeps your listeners on the edge of their seats. The pause builds tension. Their minds race with possibilities. When you finally reveal what happened, the impact is far greater than if you had rushed through without pause. Think about how this works in everyday conversation. You are telling a friend about something that happened to you. You reach the crucial moment in the story. Instead of immediately blurting out what happened, you pause. You let the tension build for just a moment. Your friend leans in, fully engaged, waiting for the revelation. Then you deliver it, and the story lands with much greater impact. This technique even works in serious professional conversations. Imagine you are in a negotiation. You make your offer, and then instead of immediately explaining or justifying it, you pause. You let it sit in the air. The other party has to sit with that number, that proposal, without you filling the silence with nervous explanations that might weaken your position. The pause makes your offer seem more solid, more final, more confident. In job interviews, strategic pauses make you appear thoughtful and deliberate, rather than nervous or unprepared. When asked a tough question, Instead of immediately filling the air with rambling speech, you can pause. You think for a moment. Then you deliver a clear, concise answer. That pause signals that you take the question seriously and that your answer is considered and genuine, not just rehearsed. The psychological mechanism behind the power of the pause is multifaceted. First, silence creates contrast. When you have been speaking and suddenly stop, the silence stands out dramatically. It captures attention in a way that continuous speech never could. The brain notices changes, and the shift from sound to silence is a powerful change. Second, pauses create processing time. The human brain needs a moment to absorb information, especially if that information is surprising, emotional, or complex. By pausing, you give your listener's brain time to catch up, to process what you just said, to fully receive it. Without that pause, you might move on to your next point before they have fully absorbed the previous one, and your communication becomes less effective. Third, pauses signal importance. In the constant noise of modern life, we are trained to skim, to half listen, to let most communication wash over us. But when someone pauses deliberately, it signals that what they just said, or what they are about to say, matters. It breaks through our defenses and demands our full attention. The challenge with pauses is that they feel much longer to you than they do to your audience. A pause that feels like an eternity of awkward silence to you might feel like just a brief, natural moment to your listeners. This is why practicing pauses is so important. You need to train yourself to be comfortable with silence, to let it exist without immediately rushing to fill it. One helpful technique is to count silently in your head. After making a key point, count 1,000 to 1,000. This feels like a long time to you, but to your audience, it is a natural, impactful pause. With practice, you will develop an intuitive sense of how long to pause in different contexts. The type of pause also matters. A brief pause after a setup and before a punchline creates anticipation. A longer pause after delivering a shocking or emotional piece of information gives people time to absorb and react. A pause before answering a question makes your response seem more thoughtful. Different situations call for different lengths and types of pauses. In written communication, pauses translate into white space, paragraph breaks, and punctuation. A well-placed period or even a new paragraph creates a pause for the reader's mind. The same principle applies. You are giving the reader time to absorb, creating emphasis, and making your writing more impactful and easier to process. Mastering the pause requires overcoming the fear of silence. We are conditioned to feel that silence in conversation or presentation is failure, that we must fill every moment with sound. But truly skilled communicators understand that silence is not emptiness. It is space for impact, for processing, for connection. The pause is not the absence of communication. It is one of the most powerful forms of communication available to us. Indirect compliments. There is something uniquely powerful about hearing that someone said something nice about you when you were not there. A compliment delivered face-to-face is nice, certainly. We appreciate being praised directly. But a compliment that reaches us indirectly, through a third party, carries a weight and authenticity that direct praise often cannot match. This is the principle of indirect compliments, and understanding it can transform how you build relationships and reinforce positive behavior. The psychology behind this is straightforward. When someone compliments you directly to your face, a small part of your mind wonders about their motives. Are they being polite? Do they want something from me? Are they just trying to make me feel good? Even when we accept the compliment graciously, there is often a tiny seed of doubt about its complete sincerity. But when you hear that someone praised you to another person, that doubt evaporates. Why would they say something nice about you to someone else if they did not genuinely mean it? There is no immediate benefit to them. They were not trying to make you feel good because you were not there. They were not buttering you up for a favor. They simply expressed their genuine opinion about you when you were not around to hear it. This makes the compliment feel profoundly authentic. Think about how this works in practice. Imagine your colleague mentions to you that your boss was singing your praises in a meeting you did not attend. Your boss specifically highlighted your creative problem solving and dedication. How does that feel compared to your boss telling you directly that you did a good job? The indirect praise likely feels more meaningful, more genuine, more likely to be what your boss truly thinks. This principle works because it bypasses our natural skepticism about people's motives. We are social creatures who evolved in groups where knowing who genuinely supports us versus who is just being polite carried survival value. Indirect compliments signal genuine support because they lack the immediate social pressure of face-to-face interaction. In leadership and management, indirect compliments become a powerful tool for motivation and morale. When you praise an employee to another team member, knowing that word will likely get back to them, you create a much stronger positive impact than the same praise delivered directly. The employee hears through the grapevine that you were genuinely impressed with their work, and this motivates them powerfully because it feels like your authentic assessment, not just managerial politeness. The technique works especially well for reinforcing specific behaviors you want to see more of. If a team member handled a difficult client situation particularly well, mentioning this to other colleagues creates a ripple effect. Not only does the praised employee hear about it and feel genuinely valued, but other team members learn what good performance looks like and that such efforts are noticed and appreciated. In personal relationships, indirect compliments strengthen bonds in unique ways. When you tell one friend how much you appreciate another friend, and that compliment makes its way back, it deepens the friendship. Your friend knows you were not just being nice to their face. You were genuinely expressing appreciation when they were not there to hear it. This creates a foundation of trust and authentic positive regard. Parents can use this technique powerfully with children. Instead of only praising your child directly, occasionally praise them to another adult while they are within earshot, or mention their positive qualities to relatives or family friends, knowing the child will likely hear about it. I was just telling your aunt how proud I am of how responsible you have been lately. This indirect praise often motivates children more effectively than constant direct praise, which can sometimes feel like empty encouragement. The technique also works in reverse for addressing concerns, though this requires much more delicacy. If you need to communicate constructive feedback, sometimes having it come indirectly through a trusted third party feels less confrontational and more like genuine concern. However, this must be done very carefully to avoid feeling like gossip or triangulation, which can damage trust. One particularly effective application is in networking and professional relationship building. When you meet someone and you want to strengthen your connection with them, finding an opportunity to genuinely compliment them to a mutual connection can be powerful. The mutual connection will likely mention your positive comments, and when they do, you will be remembered much more favorably than if you had simply complimented the person directly. In sales and customer relations, indirect compliments can turn satisfied customers into advocates. When you tell a customer that other clients have specifically mentioned how much they value your product or service, this carries more weight than you simply telling them directly that your product is valuable. The indirect social proof makes the praise more credible and compelling. The key to using indirect compliments ethically and effectively is genuine authenticity. You cannot manufacture fake praise and expect it to have the same impact. The compliment must be real, specific, and something you would say whether or not it got back to the person. If you are strategically planting compliments purely for manipulative effect, people will eventually sense the insincerity, and trust will erode. Specificity also matters. Vague, general compliments like "she is nice" or "he works hard" carry less impact than specific observations. She showed incredible empathy in how she handled that customer complaint, really listening and finding a creative solution that made everyone happy. The specificity signals that you genuinely noticed and appreciated particular actions, not just offering generic pleasantries. Timing plays a role too. Indirect compliments work best when they are timely, referring to recent actions or qualities, but not so immediate that they feel obviously calculated. If you compliment someone to a third party immediately after interacting with them, it might feel staged. But mentioning something positive about someone during a natural conversation days or weeks later feels organic and genuine. Cultural considerations matter as well. In some cultures, indirect communication is the norm, and indirect compliments fit naturally into social patterns. In other cultures that value directness, indirect compliments might feel unnecessarily roundabout. Being attuned to these cultural norms ensures your praise is received in the spirit intended. One common mistake is overdoing it. If every positive thing you say about someone is said to third parties, hoping it gets back to them, the pattern becomes obvious and loses authenticity. The most effective use of indirect compliments is as one tool among many in your relationship building repertoire. Used genuinely, when you have authentic, positive things to say about people. The beauty of this principle is that it encourages a positive cycle. When you make a habit of saying genuinely nice things about people when they are not around, several things happen. First, you train yourself to notice and appreciate positive qualities in others. Second, you build a reputation as someone who supports and values people, which draws others to you. Third, you create an environment where others feel comfortable doing the same, building a culture of genuine appreciation rather than empty flattery. In organizational settings, leaders who regularly practice indirect compliments create a culture of recognition and appreciation that goes far beyond formal performance reviews. Employees feel truly seen and valued because praise is not just something that happens in scheduled one-on-one meetings. It is woven into the everyday fabric of how people talk about each other. The ultimate goal of indirect compliments is not manipulation, but genuine relationship strengthening. When used authentically, this technique simply ensures that your genuine appreciation and positive regard for others gets communicated in the most credible and impactful way possible. It transforms passing positive thoughts into meaningful affirmations that build trust, motivation, and connection. Primacy and recency effect. Human memory is not a perfect recording device. We do not remember everything equally. Instead, our brains prioritize certain information, and understanding these priorities gives you tremendous power in communication. One of the most well-established patterns in memory research is the primacy and recency effect. Simply put, people best remember the first things and the last things they hear. The middle tends to blur together and fade. The primacy effect explains why first impressions are so powerful and so difficult to change. When you meet someone or encounter new information for the first time, your brain is highly attentive. This is novel input, and evolution has trained us to pay close attention to novelty because it might be important, even life-saving. As a result, those first moments, those first pieces of information, get encoded into memory more deeply than what comes later. The recency effect operates on a different mechanism. As an interaction or presentation draws to a close, your brain recognizes that it is time to store and synthesize information. The most recent information is still fresh in your working memory, not yet displaced by new input. This makes it easier to recall. Additionally, the brain knows that endings often contain summaries, conclusions, and final important points, so it pays attention. Together, these effects create a memory curve that looks like the letter U. Strong memory for the beginning, weaker memory for the middle, and strong memory again for the end. Understanding this pattern allows you to strategically structure any communication for maximum impact and retention. In presentations and speeches, this principle is fundamental. Your opening needs to be strong, memorable, and should introduce your most important themes. This is not the time for lengthy warm-ups or unnecessary preambles. You have your audience's full attention at the beginning. Use it wisely. State your main thesis. Tell a compelling story, share a surprising statistic, or pose a provocative question. Make those first moments count. The middle of your presentation is where you can develop your arguments, provide supporting details, and explore nuances. Your audience's attention will naturally wane somewhat in this section, so you need to work harder to maintain engagement. Use stories, examples, humor, and audience interaction to keep people focused. Break the middle into clear sections with transitions that recapture attention. Then comes your conclusion, where attention naturally returns. This is your chance to drive home your message one final time. The best presentations follow a clear structure. Tell them what you are going to tell them in the beginning. Tell them in the middle, and tell them what you told them at the end. This repetition, combined with the primacy and recency effects, ensures your key messages stick. In job interviews, understanding these effects is crucial. Your first few minutes create an impression that colors everything that follows. Arrive early, greet people warmly, open with confidence and energy. Your initial answers to questions should be strong and memorable. Then, just as importantly, finish strong. Your final question to the interviewer, your closing remarks, your goodbye. All of these final moments shape the memory of you that the interviewer will carry into their decision-making. Think about how this applies to meetings. The beginning of a meeting sets the tone and frames the entire discussion. If you start with energy, clarity, and a strong agenda, the meeting is more likely to be productive. If you waste the opening minutes on small talk or disorganized scrambling, you have lost the moment when everyone was most attentive and ready to engage. Similarly, how you end meetings matters enormously. Many meetings simply drift to a close without a clear conclusion, leaving participants confused about what was decided or what happens next. Strong meetings end with clear summaries, action items, and a sense of completion. These final moments determine what people remember and what they actually do after the meeting ends. In written communication, the same principles apply. The opening paragraph of an email, article, or report is crucial. It must capture attention and clearly state the main point. Many people only skim written materials, and if your opening does not grab them, they may never fully engage with the rest of your content. Similarly, your closing paragraph determines what readers remember and how they feel when they finish. A strong conclusion reinforces your main message and often includes a clear call to action. Even if readers skim the middle sections, a powerful conclusion ensures they leave with your key points clear in their minds. In sales and persuasion, these effects guide how you structure your pitch. Lead with your strongest benefits or most compelling points. This establishes value immediately and creates a positive frame through which everything else is interpreted. End with a powerful summary of benefits and a clear, confident call to action. The middle can contain details, specifications, and supporting information, but your strongest persuasive points belong at the beginning and end. The effects also apply to conversations, though more subtly. In a job interview or important meeting, the first things you say about yourself create a frame that influences how everything else is heard. If you open by highlighting your strengths and relevant experience, the rest of the conversation is filtered through that positive lens. If you open with apologies or hesitation, you create a negative frame that is hard to overcome. When meeting someone new, whether in a personal or professional context, your opening statements shape their entire perception of you. This is why confident, warm greetings and strong opening lines in conversation matter so much. You are establishing the frame through which all subsequent interaction will be interpreted. In teaching and training, understanding primacy and recency effects dramatically improves retention. Start each lesson by clearly stating the learning objectives and the key concepts. This gives students a mental framework for organizing everything that follows. End each lesson by reviewing those key concepts and connecting them back to the opening objectives. The repetition at the beginning and end ensures much better retention than simply plowing through material linearly. One practical application of these effects is in structuring difficult conversations. If you need to deliver bad news or constructive criticism, the way you frame the beginning and end determines how the message is received and remembered. Starting with context and genuine concern establishes a caring tone. Ending with support, resources, and a path forward gives the person something constructive to remember beyond just the negative feedback. However, there is a risk in these effects too. If you open weakly or end poorly, those moments of high attention work against you. A rambling, unfocused opening creates confusion that is hard to overcome. A weak, trailing off ending leaves people with a sense of anticlimax and unclear resolution. The same attentional mechanisms that can work powerfully for you can work powerfully against you if you do not manage them intentionally. For particularly important information that falls in the middle of a presentation or conversation, you can create artificial primacy or recency effects through emphasis, pausing before and after a key point, changing your tone or energy using a visual aid. These techniques create a moment of heightened attention in the middle section, working against the natural attention curve. The ultimate lesson of primacy and recency effects is simply this: structure matters. How you organize information, not just what information you include, determines how much impact you have and how much people remember. By consciously designing strong openings and strong closings, you work with the natural patterns of human memory rather than against them. Your ideas do not just have a better chance of being heard, they have a much better chance of being remembered, which is what truly matters in any communication. Strategic language and framing. The specific words you choose matter far more than most people realize. Two sentences can convey essentially the same information, yet produce completely different responses based purely on how they are framed. This is not about being dishonest or manipulative. It is about understanding that language shapes perception, and by choosing your words strategically, you can communicate more effectively and get better results in everything from simple requests to complex negotiations. One of the most powerful phrases in the English language is "I need your expertise." These 4 words accomplish multiple goals simultaneously. They frame your request as asking for something valuable that the other person possesses. They position the person as knowledgeable and capable. They appeal to ego and identity in positive ways. And they make the person more likely to help because doing so reinforces their self-concept as an expert. Compare this to alternative phrasings. "Can you help me?" is fine but generic. "I need your expertise" is specific and flattering. It suggests that not just anyone could help with this. You specifically have knowledge or skills that are needed. This makes people much more willing to engage with your request. Another powerful linguistic tool is giving a reason, even if that reason is relatively weak. Research has consistently shown that people are significantly more likely to comply with requests when those requests include the word because followed by any reason at all. The human brain is wired to seek causality and explanation. When you provide that, even if the explanation is not particularly compelling, compliance increases dramatically. For example, compare these 2 requests. "Can I use the copy machine?" versus "Can I use the copy machine because I need to make some copies?" The second reason is essentially meaningless. Of course you need to make copies. That is what copy machines are for. Yet research shows the second phrasing gets substantially higher compliance. The word "because" signals that a reason is coming, and the brain accepts it as justification for the request. In professional settings, this translates to always providing context and rationale for your requests. "I need this report by Friday" is less effective than "I need this report by Friday" because the board meeting is Monday morning and I need time to review and incorporate the data. The second version provides clear causality. The person understands not just what you need, but why you need it, making them much more likely to prioritize your request. Removing hesitation language dramatically increases your perceived confidence and authority. Words and phrases like "I think," "I believe," "maybe," "perhaps," "sort of," and kind of all undermine your message. They signal uncertainty, even when you actually feel confident about what you are saying. These verbal fillers are habits, often used unconsciously to soften our statements and seem less aggressive, but they cost you credibility and persuasiveness. Compare. "I think we should move forward with this strategy" to "we should move forward with this strategy." The second version is direct, confident, and authoritative. It invites agreement rather than debate. This does not mean being rigidly dogmatic or refusing to acknowledge uncertainty when it genuinely exists. It means not undermining yourself with unnecessary qualifying language when you actually have confidence in your position. The "but you are free" technique is remarkably effective at reducing resistance to requests. When you add a phrase like "but you are totally free to say no," or "but of course the choice is yours" to the end of a request, you paradoxically increase the likelihood that the person will say yes. This works because it removes the sense of pressure or obligation. People hate feeling forced or manipulated. When you explicitly acknowledge their freedom to refuse, they relax their automatic resistance and often comply willingly. For example, "I would love your feedback on this proposal, but you are completely free to pass if you are too busy right now." This phrasing makes the person more likely to provide feedback than a direct request without the freedom acknowledgement. They do not feel trapped or obligated, so their natural resistance is lower. Offering choices is another powerful framing technique. When you want someone to do something, presenting them with 2 or 3 acceptable options makes them feel in control while guiding them toward the outcome you want. Instead of asking a client, "Would you like to schedule a follow-up meeting?" or you ask, "Would Tuesday at 2 or Thursday at 10 work better for your schedule?" The first version invites a yes or no response, and no is always available. The second version assumes they are scheduling a meeting and simply asks them to choose between 2 times. This subtle reframe dramatically increases the likelihood of getting the meeting scheduled. Parents use this instinctively with children. "Do you want to clean your room now or after dinner?" offers choice, while eliminating the option of not cleaning the room at all. The child feels autonomous because they get to choose, but the parent achieves the desired outcome either way. In professional negotiations, offering choices guides the conversation toward acceptable outcomes while making the other party feel they maintain control. Rather than presenting a single offer, present 2 or 3 options, all of which work for you but appeal to different priorities. They choose the one that best fits their needs, feeling good about their agency in the decision while you achieve an acceptable result. Positive framing versus negative framing also dramatically affects responses. This product has a 95% success rate sounds much better than this product fails 5% of the time, even though they convey identical information. Our brains respond differently to gains versus losses, to positive framing versus negative framing. Whenever possible, frame information in positive terms. Similarly, approaching versus avoidance language changes how people feel about decisions. Join us in creating something amazing is approach-oriented and feels exciting. Don't miss out on this opportunity is avoidance-oriented and relies on fear of loss. Both can be effective, but approach-oriented language generally creates more positive associations and lasting engagement. The power of yet is particularly valuable in growth-oriented contexts. Instead of saying I cannot do this, or you do not understand this, adding yet completely reframes the statement. I cannot do this yet, or you do not understand this yet. These versions acknowledge current reality while embedding the assumption of future growth and capability. This linguistic shift supports a growth mindset and reduces discouragement. In customer service and conflict resolution, acknowledging before redirecting is crucial. When someone is upset or resistant, immediately contradicting them or offering solutions without acknowledgement escalates tension. Instead, acknowledge their position first, then redirect. I understand you are frustrated by the delay. Let me explain what happened and what we can do to resolve it. This structure validates their feelings before moving to problem solving, dramatically reducing resistance. Understanding strategic language and framing does not mean becoming manipulative or dishonest. It means recognizing that words are tools with different effects, and choosing the right tool for each situation improves outcomes for everyone involved. When you need someone's help, asking in a way that makes them feel valued and respected gets better results than demanding or begging. When you need to deliver difficult news, framing it with empathy and a path forward helps people receive it more constructively. The goal is always clear: effective communication that respects others while achieving your legitimate goals. Strategic language simply removes unnecessary friction, reduces misunderstanding, and creates environments where cooperation and positive outcomes become more likely. It is not about tricking people. It is about communicating in ways that naturally align with how human brains process information and make decisions. The contrast principle. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything we perceive in context in comparison to what came before. This fundamental feature of human cognition is called the contrast principle, and it explains why the order in which you present information or options can dramatically change how those options are perceived and valued. Understanding this principle gives you tremendous power in negotiation, sales, persuasion, and decision-making. The classic demonstration of the contrast principle is physical. Place one hand in ice water and the other in hot water for a minute. Then place both hands in lukewarm water. The same lukewarm water will feel hot to the hand that was in ice and cold to the hand that was in hot water. The water has not changed. Your perception of it has changed, based on the contrast with what you experienced immediately before. This same principle governs how we perceive prices, offers, effort, and value in virtually every domain of life. If you show someone an expensive item first and then a moderately priced item, the moderate item seems like a bargain. If you show the moderate item first, then the expensive item seems outrageously overpriced. The items have not changed. The perception changes based entirely on the order of presentation. Retailers understand this instinctively. High-end clothing stores often position their most expensive items near the entrance. This is not because those items sell most frequently. It is because seeing those prices first creates a reference point, an anchor, that makes everything else in the store seem more reasonable by comparison. A $500 shirt seems almost affordable after you have just seen $2,000 suits. Car dealerships use the same principle. A skilled salesperson will often show you vehicles at the top of your stated budget, or even slightly above it first. After you have seen and experienced these higher-priced options, vehicles at the lower end of your budget feel like they are missing something. Or, alternatively, vehicles in the middle of your budget suddenly seem like a reasonable compromise, even if they are more than you originally intended to spend. The contrast principle extends beyond pricing. In negotiations, your first offer, even if extreme, sets an anchor that influences all subsequent discussion. If you are selling something and you start with a high asking price, even if the buyer negotiates you down substantially, The final price is likely to be higher than if you had started with a moderate opening offer. The high anchor pulls the entire negotiation upward. Similarly, if you are buying something and you make a very low initial offer, you anchor the negotiation downward. Even if you have to come up substantially from that initial offer, the final price is likely to be lower than if you had opened with a more moderate bid. The key is that first number creates a psychological reference point that is very difficult for either party to fully escape. This principle also explains why giving someone an extreme option makes a moderate option seem more appealing. Imagine a software company offering 3 pricing tiers: basic at $50 per month, professional at $150 per month, and enterprise at $500 per month. Most customers will not choose the enterprise tier, but its presence makes the professional tier seem much more reasonable. Without the enterprise option, many customers might balk at spending $150 and opt for the basic tier. But compared to $500, $150 suddenly feels like a smart middle ground. This is called the decoy effect, or asymmetric dominance, and it is used constantly in marketing and pricing strategy. The expensive option exists primarily to make the middle option look attractive. Movie theaters offer enormous tubs of popcorn at prices that seem absurd, but this makes the large size seem like much better value. Very few people buy the enormous size, but many people upgrade from medium to large because of the comparison. In personal life, the contrast principle affects how we experience everything from gifts to effort to time. If you work 80-hour weeks regularly, a 60-hour week feels like vacation, even though 60 hours is objectively still very long. The contrast with 80 hours changes your perception entirely. If someone normally gives minimal effort and then suddenly gives moderate effort, you notice and appreciate it. If someone normally gives maximum effort and then gives moderate effort, you perceive it as slacking. The actual effort might be identical, but the contrast changes everything. Understanding this principle helps in managing expectations and perceptions. If you need to deliver disappointing news, delivering worse news first, and then correcting to the actual news, makes the reality seem better by contrast. This must be done ethically, of course. You cannot fabricate false bad news just to make real news seem better. But if there are genuinely different ways the situation could have turned out, framing the worst case first makes the actual case feel more positive. In parenting and education, the contrast principle explains why starting with more difficult tasks makes subsequent tasks feel easier. If a child struggles through a challenging homework assignment and then moves to an easier one, the easier one feels almost fun by contrast. If they start with the easy assignment, the hard one feels impossibly difficult. The assignments have not changed, but the experience of them has changed entirely based on order. Job candidates can use this principle strategically in interviews. When discussing salary expectations, if you name a number first and it is higher than what the employer planned to offer, you have anchored the negotiation upward. Even if they counter with something lower, it is likely to be higher than if they had made the first offer. Conversely, if the employer asks what you currently earn and you state a lower number, you have anchored the negotiation downward, potentially costing yourself money. The principle also applies to perceptions of effort and difficulty. If you need to ask someone for a large favor, one strategy is to first ask for an even larger, almost unreasonable favor that they will likely decline. Then, after they refuse, you ask for your actual desired favor, which now seems much more reasonable by contrast. This is sometimes called the door-in-the-face technique, the opposite of foot in the door. For example, you might ask a colleague if they could take over your entire project for a week. They will almost certainly say no. Then you ask if they could just review one section of the project and give feedback, which was your actual goal all along. Compared to taking over the entire project, reviewing one section seems trivial, and they are more likely to agree. However, this technique requires careful calibration. If your initial request is so absurd that it damages credibility or creates resentment, the technique backfires. The first request must be large enough to create contrast, but not so large that it seems ridiculous or offensive. In menu design, restaurants use the contrast principle extensively. They often place 1 or 2 extremely expensive items on the menu. Very few people order these items, but their presence makes everything else seem more affordable. A $45 entree seems reasonable when there is a $75 option right below it. Without that contrast, the $45 item might seem overpriced. Wine lists follow the same pattern. Restaurants know that most people avoid ordering the cheapest wine because it signals being cheap, but they also avoid ordering expensive wines because they seem wasteful. Most people gravitate toward the second or third least expensive option. Understanding this, restaurants can strategically price their wines. If they want to sell more of a particular wine, they simply need to position it as the second or third cheapest option, even if its absolute price is relatively high. The contrast principle even affects how we perceive physical attractiveness, competence, and talent. If you see a moderately attractive person immediately after seeing someone stunningly beautiful, the moderately attractive person seems less attractive than if you had seen them in isolation. If you watch a competent performer right after watching a brilliant performer, the competent performer seems worse than they objectively are. This has implications for how you present yourself and your work. If possible, you want to avoid being directly compared to someone significantly better in the same domain. You want to create contexts where your strengths shine without immediate unflattering contrast. Conversely, if you want to make someone else's work look better, pair it with weaker comparisons rather than stronger ones. In negotiations involving multiple issues, savvy negotiators use contrast to make concessions seem larger than they are. If you concede on a major point first, subsequent smaller concessions seem trivial by comparison. If you concede on minor points first, a later concession on a major point feels enormous. Understanding this dynamic allows you to structure negotiations for maximum perceived generosity, while giving up minimum actual value. The contrast principle also explains why incremental changes are often easier to implement than sudden large changes. If you want to establish a new habit, starting with a tiny version of that habit makes subsequent increases feel manageable by contrast. If you want to exercise daily, starting with just 5 minutes makes increasing to 10 minutes feel easy. Increasing from 0 to 30 minutes feels overwhelming. The actual effort might eventually be the same, but the contrast makes the incremental path much more psychologically manageable. In communication, contrasting your message with worse alternatives makes your actual message more appealing. I'm not asking you to work all weekend. I just need a few hours on Saturday morning. The contrast makes the actual request seem minimal. This is not asking you to completely change your approach. I'm just suggesting one small adjustment. Again, the contrast frames the request as modest. Understanding the contrast principle means understanding that context shapes perception more than we usually realize. Identical information, identical offers, identical efforts can be perceived completely differently based purely on what came immediately before. This is not a flaw in human thinking. It is simply how our brains efficiently process information by focusing on changes and comparisons rather than absolute values. Used ethically, this principle helps you communicate more effectively, negotiate better outcomes, make stronger presentations, and generally achieve your legitimate goals more easily. Used unethically, it becomes manipulation that damages trust when people realize what you have done. The key is always honesty about absolute values while being strategic about the order and context in which information is presented, creating scarcity and urgency. Human beings are remarkably good at procrastinating and avoiding decisions. We tell ourselves we will do something later. We leave options open. We delay commitment. This tendency is so strong that often the only way to overcome it is through scarcity and urgency. When an opportunity is limited or time is running out, suddenly we find the motivation to act. Understanding this principle allows you to help others and yourself overcome inertia and make decisions. The psychology behind scarcity and urgency is rooted in loss aversion. Research consistently shows that humans feel the pain of losing something approximately twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. When an opportunity is abundant and always available, we perceive no risk of loss. We can always get it later. But when that opportunity becomes scarce or time-limited, suddenly we face potential loss. We might miss out. This fear of missing out, commonly known as FOMO, overrides our tendency to procrastinate and pushes us toward action. Think about how this works in sales and marketing. Limited time offer, only 3 left in stock. Sale ends tonight. These phrases create urgency and scarcity. They signal that if you do not act now, you might lose this opportunity forever. Even when we know intellectually that similar opportunities will likely appear again, the immediate threat of loss motivates us to act in ways that vague future possibility never could. This principle explains why deadlines are so effective at driving productivity. Without a deadline, most projects would expand indefinitely. We would keep refining, reconsidering, perfecting, never quite finishing. But with a deadline, especially one that is firm and meaningful, we suddenly find focus and efficiency. The constraint of time creates urgency that overcomes perfectionism and procrastination. Retailers understand this deeply. Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday deals, flash sales, clearance events, all of these create artificial scarcity and urgency. The products are not actually becoming permanently unavailable in most cases, but the special price is limited. The combination of savings and time pressure creates powerful motivation to buy now rather than wait. Online retailers have taken this even further with real-time scarcity indicators. Only 2 rooms left at this price. 3 other people are looking at this item right now. This deal expires in 2 hours, 17 minutes. These messages create immediate urgency. They trigger fear of missing out and push people toward quick purchase decisions. However, for scarcity and urgency to work, they must be real, or at least perceived as real. If people discover that your limited time offer runs every week or that your almost sold out warnings are fake, trust evaporates. The technique loses all effectiveness and damages your reputation. Scarcity and urgency work precisely because they signal genuine limitation. When that signal proves false, people stop believing it. In project management and team leadership, setting clear deadlines creates urgency that drives completion. But those deadlines must be meaningful. If deadlines are constantly flexible or consequences for missing them are non-existent, people learn that the urgency is fake and they stop responding to it. The deadlines must be real, with genuine consequences for missing them and genuine benefits for meeting them. Personal productivity benefits enormously from self-imposed deadlines and artificial scarcity. If you want to write a book but you have unlimited time, you might never finish. But if you commit publicly to publishing by a specific date, or if you sign a contract with a publisher that includes a deadline, suddenly you find the focus to write. The deadline creates urgency that overcomes the natural resistance and fear that stops most creative projects from being completed. The principle also works in negotiation. If you have multiple interested parties for something you are selling, whether a house, a car, or a business, the competition creates scarcity. Each potential buyer knows they might lose the opportunity to someone else. This urgency often leads to better offers made more quickly. Even if you do not actually have multiple interested parties, the perception that you might create similar effects. Job candidates can create scarcity by mentioning other opportunities they are exploring. This is not dishonest if it is true, and it creates healthy urgency for employers who might otherwise drag out hiring decisions indefinitely. The perception that a strong candidate might accept another offer creates motivation to move quickly and make competitive offers. In personal relationships and social situations, scarcity also plays a role. People who are always available are often valued less than people whose time and attention are scarce. This is not about playing games or being manipulative. It is simply human nature. We value what is rare and special more than what is common and abundant. Someone who has a busy, full life and makes time for you specifically feels more valuable than someone who is always waiting around hoping you will pay attention to them. However, creating artificial scarcity in relationships is dangerous and often backfires. The scarcity must be genuine, arising from actually having a full, interesting life, not from strategically ignoring people to make them want you more. People sense the difference between genuine scarcity and manipulative unavailability. In fundraising and charitable giving, scarcity and urgency are powerful motivators. Matching donations that end on a specific date create urgency. Your donation will be doubled, but only if we reach our goal by midnight tonight. This creates immediate motivation to give now rather than later. Emergency appeals for disaster relief naturally create urgency. People need help now, not next month, so people are motivated to give immediately. Limited spots or capacity also creates scarcity that motivates action. Only 20 spots available for this workshop. First 50 registrants receive a bonus. These messages make people act quickly rather than waiting and risking missing out. Even when the limitation is relatively arbitrary, the scarcity creates urgency. One interesting application of urgency is in health behavior and decision making. People often procrastinate on important health decisions because the consequences feel distant. But reframing these decisions to create urgency can motivate action. Every day you delay treatment, the condition progresses. This is not scaremongering if it is medically accurate. It is creating appropriate urgency around decisions that genuinely matter. The digital age has amplified scarcity and urgency in interesting ways. Social media platforms use these principles constantly. Limited time stories that disappear after 24 hours create urgency to view them now. Trending topics create scarcity. Right now, everyone is talking about this, and if you do not engage immediately, you will miss the moment. Streaks and daily engagement rewards create urgency to use the platform every single day. Understanding these mechanisms helps you recognize when they are being used on you, allowing more conscious decision-making. That urgent sale might not be as urgent as it seems. That limited time offer might come around again. Creating some space between the urgency signal and your response allows you to evaluate whether the opportunity is genuinely valuable or whether you are being manipulated by artificial pressure. When you use scarcity and urgency yourself, the ethical guideline is simple. Is the scarcity or urgency real? Are you helping people make good decisions they would regret missing? Or are you pressuring them into decisions they will regret making? If your product or opportunity is genuinely valuable and genuinely limited, creating urgency helps people recognize that value and act on it. If you are manufacturing fake urgency to manipulate people into bad decisions, that is unethical and will eventually damage your reputation and relationships. The ultimate goal of scarcity and urgency, when used ethically, is to help people overcome the natural human tendency toward inertia and indecision. Sometimes we need a push to take action on things that are genuinely good for us. A real deadline, a genuine limitation. These can be the catalysts that transform intention into action, that help us achieve things we genuinely want, but might otherwise procrastinate on indefinitely. Reciprocity. Deep in human psychology, wired through millennia of social evolution, is a powerful drive toward reciprocity. When someone does something for us, we feel obligated to return the favor. This is not manipulation or weakness. It is one of the fundamental social bonds that allows human cooperation and society to function. Understanding reciprocity gives you tremendous power to build relationships, create goodwill, and influence behavior in positive ways. The reciprocity principle works because humans are intensely social creatures who survived through cooperation. Those who gave but never received eventually stopped giving and were worse off. Those who received but never gave were ostracized by the group and unlikely to survive. Over countless generations, we evolved powerful feelings of obligation around reciprocal exchange. When someone gives to us, we feel uncomfortable until we give something back, restoring balance to the relationship. This principle explains why free samples work so effectively. When a grocery store offers you a small piece of cheese or a tiny cup of juice, they are not really marketing the taste of their product, though that is part of it. They are creating a sense of obligation through the gift. You have received something, and now you feel a subtle pressure to reciprocate by purchasing the product. Many people buy items they did not want or need simply because they feel obligated after receiving a free sample. Restaurants understand this too. When servers bring mints or candy with the check, tips increase measurably. The mints are a small gift, and customers feel obligated to reciprocate with a slightly larger tip. The cost of the mints is trivial compared to the increase in tips. The reciprocity principle turns a few cents of candy into dollars of additional income. In business relationships and networking, reciprocity is fundamental. If you want to build strong professional relationships, start by giving before you ask. Offer help, share information, make introductions, provide value in whatever form is meaningful to the other person. This creates reciprocity pressure. When you eventually need something from them, they feel obligated to return the favor. More importantly, you have established a pattern of mutual support that strengthens the relationship over time. The key is that the giving must come first and must be genuine. If you only help people when you want something in return, the reciprocity effect is weak because your self-interest is obvious. But if you build a pattern of generosity, helping people without immediate expectation of return, you create a reservoir of reciprocity. When you do eventually need help, people are not just obligated, they are actually eager to reciprocate and restore balance. Negotiations benefit from understanding reciprocity. When you make a concession, even a small one, the other party feels pressure to make a concession in return. Skilled negotiators use this by strategically conceding on points that matter less to them, but matter more to the other side. This creates reciprocity pressure for the other side to concede on points that matter more to you but less to them. The negotiation becomes a collaborative process of exchange rather than a zero-sum battle. Customer service and retention improve dramatically when companies give before they take. When a company proactively solves a problem before you even complain, when they include unexpected bonuses or upgrades, when they show genuine care for your satisfaction, beyond what is strictly required, they create powerful reciprocity. You become a loyal customer, not just because of the product quality, but because you feel you owe something to this company that has given you more than you expected. In personal relationships, reciprocity works differently but no less powerfully. Healthy relationships involve ongoing give and take, a continuous exchange of support, kindness, and care. When one person consistently gives without receiving, resentment builds. When one person consistently takes without giving, the relationship becomes unsustainable. The natural rhythm of reciprocity keeps relationships balanced and healthy. However, keeping score too explicitly damages relationships. If every favor must be immediately and exactly repaid, the relationship feels transactional rather than genuine. Healthy reciprocity operates with some looseness and trust. I help you today, you help me next month. Over time, things balance out, but not through careful accounting. The obligation is felt, but not demanded, honored, but not calculated. In charitable giving and social causes, reciprocity creates surprising effects. When charities send you free address labels or greeting cards along with their donation request, many people feel obligated to donate, even if they did not particularly want the labels. The gift, though small and unsolicited, creates reciprocity pressure. This technique is controversial because it feels manipulative to some people, but it works precisely because reciprocity is such a powerful psychological force. In leadership and management, reciprocity builds loyalty and motivation far more effectively than authority alone. When a leader goes out of their way to support team members, fighting for their resources, advocating for their advancement, showing flexibility when they face personal challenges, this creates powerful reciprocity. Team members work harder, stay more committed, and go beyond what is strictly required because they feel genuine obligation and gratitude toward a leader who has invested in them. The timing of reciprocity also matters. Immediate reciprocation feels transactional. If you help someone and they immediately offer to pay you or help you back, the exchange feels commercial rather than relational. But if time passes between the initial favor and the reciprocation, the exchange feels more like genuine relationship and mutual support. There is trust involved. You gave without immediate expectation, and they returned the favor when it was appropriate, not as a reflexive transaction. One fascinating aspect of reciprocity is that the return favor does not need to be equivalent in kind or value. If someone gives you professional advice, you might reciprocate by introducing them to a valuable contact. If someone helps you move, you might reciprocate by cooking them dinner. The reciprocity is felt across different domains. What matters is that something of value, however defined, flows in both directions over time. Cultural differences in reciprocity are important to understand. In some cultures, reciprocity is expected to be relatively immediate and equivalent. In others, reciprocity operates over much longer timeframes with less explicit tracking. Some cultures consider it rude to immediately reciprocate because it suggests you want to quickly discharge the obligation rather than nurture an ongoing relationship. Understanding these nuances prevents misunderstandings in cross-cultural interactions. The reciprocity principle can be exploited in harmful ways, and recognizing these manipulations protects you. When someone gives you something unsolicited and then pressures you for immediate, disproportionate reciprocation, they are exploiting reciprocity norms. Scammers use this technique. They do you a small, unsolicited favor and then ask for a large favor in return, counting on your discomfort with not reciprocating to manipulate you into compliance. The defense against manipulative reciprocity is recognizing unsolicited gifts for what they might be, attempts to create artificial obligation. You are not required to reciprocate for things you did not request and do not want. If someone gives you something and then immediately expects disproportionate reciprocation, you can politely decline or offer an appropriate, limited response without feeling guilty about not fully reciprocating. In marketing and advertising, brands create reciprocity through content marketing and value creation. When a company provides genuinely useful free content, tutorials, tools, or information, they create reciprocity. When you eventually need to purchase in their category, you feel some obligation toward the brand that has given you value. This is ethical reciprocity because the value exchange is transparent and the recipient genuinely benefits. Political and social influence often operates through reciprocity. Politicians do favors for constituents or other politicians, creating networks of reciprocal obligation. This is not inherently corrupt, though it can become so. In healthy forms, it is simply how cooperative social systems function. People help each other, creating webs of mutual obligation that facilitate future cooperation. The reciprocity principle also affects how we perceive and evaluate information. If someone has been generous with their time and knowledge, we are more likely to view their ideas favorably. We unconsciously want to reciprocate their generosity by being receptive to what they are teaching or proposing. This is why thought leaders and influencers often give away tremendous amounts of free content. The reciprocity created makes their audience more receptive when they eventually sell something. In fundraising beyond just charitable giving, reciprocity creates powerful dynamics. Alumni donations to universities are partly driven by reciprocity for the education received. The gift was received years or decades earlier, but the obligation persists. Similarly, mentees often feel lifelong obligation to give back to mentors who invested in their development, even though the mentorship was freely given. One powerful variation of reciprocity is reciprocal vulnerability. When someone shares something vulnerable or personal with you, you feel drawn to reciprocate with your own vulnerability. This creates deepening intimacy and trust. Therapists and counselors use this carefully, sharing appropriate personal experiences that encourage clients to open up. Friends become closer through mutual sharing that operates on reciprocity principles. The principle even affects online behavior and digital communities. When someone upvotes your content, answers your question, or engages positively with your posts, you feel inclined to reciprocate. This reciprocal engagement is what makes online communities function. Without reciprocity norms, everyone would take value from communities without contributing, and the communities would collapse. Understanding reciprocity means understanding that humans are fundamentally social and cooperative. We are wired to give and take, to create networks of mutual obligation that make complex cooperation possible. This is not weakness or gullibility. It is the foundation of human society. When used ethically, reciprocity builds strong relationships, creates value for all parties, and makes collaboration and community possible. The ethical use of reciprocity always involves genuine value exchange. You give something of real value with genuine generosity, not as a calculated manipulation. When reciprocation comes, it feels natural and appropriate, not coerced or excessive. Both parties benefit. Both parties feel the relationship is balanced and fair. This is reciprocity at its best, the social glue that binds people together in mutually beneficial relationships. Labeling. One of the most powerful forces in human psychology is the drive to be consistent with our identity, with who we believe ourselves to be. We want our actions to align with our self-concept. Understanding this allows you to use a technique called labeling, where you assign positive traits or identities to people, encouraging them to act in ways that match those labels. This is not manipulation when done with genuine positive intent. It is recognizing potential and calling it forth. The psychology behind labeling is straightforward. When someone we respect tells us we possess a certain positive quality, we internalize that as part of our identity. Then, because we want to be consistent with that identity, we act in ways that reinforce it. If a teacher tells a student you are such a creative problem solver, that student begins to see themselves that way. When facing future challenges, they are more likely to attempt creative solutions because that is who they are. This works across all ages and contexts. Children are particularly susceptible to labeling because their identities are still forming. When parents or teachers label children with positive traits, those children often grow into those labels. You are so thoughtful. You are very brave. You are a natural leader. These labels become self-fulfilling prophecies as children act in ways consistent with how they have been described. However, Negative labels work the same way, which is why they are so damaging. If a child is repeatedly told they are lazy, difficult, or not smart, they internalize these labels and act accordingly. This is why focusing on positive labeling is so crucial in parenting and education. Even when correcting behavior, the focus should be on the positive identity you want to encourage rather than negative labels that become self-fulfilling. Instead of saying you are so messy, you might say, I know you are someone who takes pride in their space, so let us get this room organized. The first statement labels the child as messy, which they might internalize. The second statement labels them as someone who values organization, encouraging them to act consistently with that positive identity. In workplace settings, labeling is a powerful leadership tool. When you tell an employee you are incredibly reliable or I really appreciate your attention to detail, you are not just complimenting them, you are reinforcing an identity. That employee now sees themselves as reliable or detail-oriented, and they will work to maintain consistency with that self-image. Future behavior aligns with the labeled identity. This technique works especially well with new employees or team members who are still figuring out their role and identity within the organization. Early positive labeling shapes how they see themselves and how they approach their work. You have great instincts for this work. You are a natural collaborator. These labels guide the development of their professional identity. Labeling also works in sales and customer relations. When you tell a customer, you can tell you are someone who values quality, or you are clearly very thoughtful about these decisions. You are labeling them with positive traits. They then feel obligated to act consistently with those labels, which often means making the purchase or decision you are advocating for, because it aligns with the identity you have attributed to them. In negotiations, labeling your counterpart with positive traits makes them more likely to embody those traits. I appreciate that you are someone who is fair and reasonable. This label encourages them to act fairly and reasonably, because doing otherwise would be inconsistent with the identity you have attributed to them. Most people want to live up to positive expectations. The technique even works in difficult or adversarial situations. When dealing with someone who is being hostile or uncooperative, labeling them with the positive traits you want to see can transform the interaction. I know you are someone who cares about finding solutions that work for everyone. This label invites them to step into that identity, often reducing hostility and opening space for cooperation. However, labeling must be done authentically and must be based on some kernel of truth or potential. If you label someone with traits they obviously do not possess and have shown no inclination toward, they will recognize the manipulation and reject the label. Effective labeling identifies emerging qualities or potential and amplifies them, not fabricate qualities from nothing. The labels must also be specific rather than vague. You are great is nice, but does not provide a clear identity to step into. You are exceptionally thorough in your research, or you have a gift for explaining complex ideas, simply gives people specific identities to embody. The specificity makes the label more credible and more actionable. In personal relationships, labeling strengthens bonds and encourages positive dynamics. When you tell a friend you are such a loyal person, or you always know the right thing to say, you reinforce those qualities. Your friend internalizes these labels and continues to act in ways that match them, strengthening the very qualities you appreciate. Romantic relationships benefit from positive labeling as well. When partners label each other with appreciated traits, you are so thoughtful, or I love how adventurous you are, they reinforce those aspects of each other's identities. This creates a positive cycle where each person lives up to the best version of themselves as reflected in their partner's eyes. The technique works on yourself too. Self-labeling, or positive self-talk, shapes your own identity and behavior. When you tell yourself, I am disciplined, or I am a person who follows through on commitments, you create internal pressure to act consistently with those self-labels. This is more powerful than vague affirmations because it connects to identity rather than just temporary states or wishes. Athletes and performers use this constantly. I am a clutch player. I am someone who performs well under pressure. These self-labels shape how they approach high-stakes situations. The label creates an expectation, and the brain works to fulfill that expectation, accessing resources and focus that might not be available without the identity framework. One important consideration is the difference between labeling traits versus labeling outcomes. "You are so smart" is outcome-focused and can actually be demotivating because intelligence seems fixed. "You are such a hard worker," or "you are great at persisting through challenges," is trait-focused on effort and approach, which is more motivating and actionable. The person can control their effort and persistence. They cannot control their innate intelligence. Research on growth mindset has shown that praising effort, strategy, and persistence rather than innate ability leads to better long-term outcomes. This is labeling applied with understanding of what truly drives positive behavior. You worked really hard on this and tried different approaches until you found one that worked. Labels someone as persistent and strategic, which are identities they can continue to embody. Labeling also works in community building and organizational culture. When leaders consistently label their organization or team with positive traits, the culture becomes, "We are innovators. We are people who care deeply about our customers. We are a team that supports each other." These labels become part of collective identity. Team members act consistently with these labels because that is who we are. The most ethical and effective use of labeling focuses on genuinely positive traits that benefit both the individual and those around them. You are helping someone become the best version of themselves, not manipulating them into serving your interests at their expense. When labeling is used this way, it becomes a gift, a reflection of potential that helps people grow into their best selves. Shared struggle. There is something paradoxical about human connection. Often, the strongest bonds are formed not during easy, comfortable times, but during periods of challenge and struggle. When people face difficulties together, working side by side to overcome obstacles, they develop trust and connection that would take much longer to build in ordinary circumstances. This is the principle of shared struggle, and understanding it transforms how you build teams, relationships, and community. The psychology behind this is rooted in evolutionary history. Our ancestors survived by cooperating through challenges. Those who could trust their companions during hunts, migrations, conflicts, and famines were more likely to survive and reproduce. Over countless generations, we evolved to form particularly strong bonds with those who have struggled alongside us. The brain interprets shared adversity as a test of reliability and commitment, and those who pass that test become trusted allies. Think about military units or first responder teams. These groups often develop extraordinarily strong bonds, not despite the difficult conditions they face, but because of them. They have seen each other under pressure, relied on each other in dangerous situations, and overcome challenges together. This creates trust and connection that civilian friendships, formed in comfortable circumstances, rarely match. Sports teams understand this instinctively. Coaches often create deliberately difficult training conditions, not just to build physical capability, but to build team cohesion. When athletes struggle through brutal workouts together, support each other through exhaustion, and celebrate overcoming challenges as a group, they bond. The shared struggle creates something beyond individual capability, a collective identity forged in adversity. In business and organizational settings, teams that successfully overcome significant challenges together develop exceptional cohesion. A startup that barely survives its early years, working ridiculous hours to build something from nothing, creates bonds between founders and early employees that are almost familial. They went through the fire together. They know they can count on each other. However, this principle can be misused. Some leaders deliberately create unnecessary stress or adversity, thinking it will build team cohesion. This backfires. Artificial or pointless struggle creates resentment, not bonding. The struggle must be real, meaningful, and directed toward a worthwhile goal. The team must feel they are overcoming genuine challenges together, not suffering through arbitrary difficulties imposed by poor leadership. The key is authenticity. Natural challenges that arise in pursuit of meaningful goals create positive shared struggle. A product launch with genuine technical difficulties, a tight deadline on an important project, a difficult client situation that requires all hands on deck. These real challenges create bonding when the team faces them together and supports each other through them. Leadership during shared struggle is crucial. Leaders who face difficulties alongside their teams, showing vulnerability and solidarity, create much stronger bonds than leaders who remain distant or protected from the struggle. When a CEO works late nights alongside employees during a crisis, when a manager admits uncertainty but commits to figuring things out together, they build trust that cannot be created through smooth times and easy wins. This principle also explains why difficult journeys create strong friendships. People who travel together through challenging conditions, whether backpacking through difficult terrain, traveling through foreign countries with language barriers, or even just surviving a terrible road trip together, often become close friends. The shared struggle creates stories, inside jokes, and a sense of having been through something together that bonds them. In personal relationships, couples who successfully navigate serious challenges together often emerge with stronger relationships. Illness, financial hardship, family crises, these difficulties can destroy relationships if not handled well. But when couples face them as a team, supporting each other and working together to overcome them, the relationship often deepens significantly. They have proven to each other that they can be relied upon when things are hard, not just when things are easy. However, shared struggle must be balanced with shared joy. Relationships built only on hardship can become defined by negativity. The healthiest bonds combine shared struggle with shared celebration. Mutual support through difficulties with mutual enjoyment of good times. The struggle creates trust and depth, but joy creates positive association and makes the relationship rewarding. In community building, whether neighborhoods, religious congregations, or volunteer organizations, shared work toward difficult goals creates cohesion. A community that comes together to rebuild after a natural disaster, a church group that travels to help communities in need, a neighborhood that collaborates to improve local schools. These shared struggles create bonds that ordinary social interaction cannot. Educational settings benefit from understanding this principle as well. Group projects that involve genuine challenge and require real collaboration can build strong bonds between students. Study groups struggling through difficult material together often form lasting friendships. The key is that the challenge must be appropriate, difficult enough to require genuine effort and collaboration, but not so overwhelming that it creates helpless despair. The principle works across scales, from two-person relationships to entire nations. Countries that have gone through wars, natural disasters, or major social challenges often develop strong national identities and social cohesion. The shared struggle creates a collective story, a sense of we went through this together that bonds people who might otherwise have little in common. Understanding shared struggle means recognizing that you should not shelter people from all difficulty if you want to build strong relationships with them. Obviously, you do not create unnecessary hardship, but when genuine challenges arise, facing them together rather than protecting others from them or facing them alone creates opportunity for bonding that comfort never provides. This has implications for parenting as well. Parents who shield children from every difficulty deprive them of opportunities to build resilience and to bond through overcoming challenges together. Age-appropriate struggles, faced with parental support but requiring genuine child effort, build both capability and parent-child connection. In mentorship relationships, mentors who guide mentees through genuine professional challenges, offering support but allowing them to struggle and grow, build much stronger relationships than mentors who simply offer advice in comfortable settings. The mentee remembers who was there during difficult times, who believed in them when things were hard, who helped them overcome real obstacles. The ultimate insight of shared struggle is that difficulty, while unpleasant, is not purely negative. When faced together, with mutual support and genuine commitment, struggle becomes the forge in which the strongest relationships are made. It reveals character, builds trust, creates shared stories, and proves reliability in ways that easy times never can. The bonds created through shared struggle are among the most durable and meaningful connections humans can form. Reframing. Anxiety is excitement. Our bodies respond to anxiety and excitement in remarkably similar ways. Both emotions increase heart rate, heighten alertness, release adrenaline, and create a sense of heightened energy. The physical sensations are nearly identical. What differs is the interpretation, the story we tell ourselves about what these bodily sensations mean. Understanding this creates a powerful technique for managing stress and improving performance through reframing anxiety as excitement. the traditional advice for dealing with anxiety is to calm down, to reduce arousal, to relax. But research suggests this is actually difficult and often ineffective. When your body is in a high arousal state, trying to force it into a low arousal state requires fighting against powerful physiological processes. It is like trying to suddenly stop a car that is moving at high speed. You are working against significant momentum. Reframing offers a different approach. Instead of trying to reduce arousal, you simply relabel it. Your heart is racing not because you are anxious, but because you are excited. Your heightened alertness is not fear but anticipation. Your energy is not nervous dread but enthusiastic readiness. This relabeling works because your brain is surprisingly flexible about how it interprets ambiguous physiological signals. Research has demonstrated this dramatically. In studies where people were asked to speak publicly, one group was told to try to calm down, while another group was told to reframe their nervousness as excitement. The excitement group performed significantly better, appeared more confident, and actually felt more positive about the experience. Simply changing the label they applied to their arousal changed their performance and experience. This works because excitement and anxiety exist on the same arousal spectrum, but with different valences. Both are high energy states, but excitement is positively valenced, while anxiety is negatively valenced. The physical sensations are similar enough that your brain can accept either interpretation. By consciously choosing to interpret the sensations as excitement, you transform the experience from threatening to energizing. The technique is simple to apply. When you notice physical symptoms of anxiety, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, butterflies in your stomach, you explicitly tell yourself these are signs of excitement. I am excited. This is exciting. My body is getting ready for something good. The conscious relabeling begins to shift your emotional experience, even though the physical arousal remains. This is not just positive thinking or self-deception. The physical state of arousal is genuinely ambiguous. It could be anxiety or excitement. By choosing to interpret it as excitement, you are not lying to yourself. You are simply selecting one valid interpretation over another, and that interpretation changes how you approach the situation and how you ultimately perform. Public speaking is one of the most common contexts where this technique proves valuable. Most people experience significant physical arousal before speaking to an audience. Traditional advice says to take deep breaths and calm down, but speakers who reframe that arousal as excitement often perform better. They bring energy and enthusiasm to their presentation that audiences respond to positively. The arousal becomes fuel for an engaging performance rather than a barrier to overcome. Job interviews benefit from the same approach. The nervousness you feel walking into an interview room can be reframed as excitement about the opportunity. This subtle shift changes your demeanor. You appear energized and enthusiastic rather than anxious and uncertain. Interviewers respond more positively to candidates who seem excited about the position rather than nervous about being evaluated. Athletic performance improves with this reframing as well. Pre-competition jitters are nearly universal among athletes. Those who interpret these feelings as anxiety often perform poorly, tight, and hesitant. Those who interpret the same feelings as excitement often perform at their best, energized and ready. The physical state is the same. The performance differs based entirely on the interpretation. The technique works in creative contexts too. Many writers, artists, and musicians experience significant anxiety when facing a blank page, canvas, or stage. Reframing this as excitement about the creative opportunity ahead transforms the experience. The energy becomes creative fuel rather than a barrier, helping rather than hindering the work. Social situations where many people feel anxiety, dates, parties, networking events, become more enjoyable when the arousal is reframed as excitement. Instead of dreading social interaction, you tell yourself you are excited to meet new people, excited about interesting conversations ahead. This shift in frame often becomes self-fulfilling as your energy and openness attract positive interactions. One key to making this technique work is catching yourself early. Once anxiety has fully taken hold and you have spent significant time reinforcing the anxiety interpretation, reframing becomes harder. But if you notice the first signs of arousal and immediately label them as excitement, the reframe is much easier and more effective. This is exciting becomes your automatic response to physiological arousal rather than, oh no, I am getting anxious. The language you use with yourself matters significantly. Saying I should not be anxious actually reinforces the anxiety frame. Saying this is exciting explicitly invokes the excitement frame. Similarly, I am nervous, but I will try to stay calm keeps you in the anxiety framework. I am excited and ready to do this shifts you into the excitement framework. This technique also helps in teaching and parenting contexts. When children express nervousness about performances, competitions, or new experiences, helping them reframe that feeling as excitement sets them up for better experiences. The butterflies in your stomach mean you are excited, and your body is getting ready to do something awesome. This frame helps children approach challenges with positive energy rather than avoidance and fear. However, reframing has its limits. Genuine anxiety disorders or trauma-based fear responses are not simply mislabeled excitement. Clinical anxiety requires professional treatment, not just cognitive reframing. The technique works best for situational performance anxiety, the kind of arousal that comes from facing challenges and opportunities, not from clinical conditions requiring therapeutic intervention. Additionally, some level of anxiety is appropriate and adaptive in genuinely dangerous situations. If you are facing a real threat, reframing fear as excitement would be maladaptive. The technique is specifically for situations where arousal arises from challenges and opportunities, not genuine dangers. Understanding the reframing technique empowers you to take control of your interpretations of bodily states. You recognize that feelings are not facts, and that you have more agency over your emotional experience than you might have realized. The racing heart, the heightened alertness, the rush of energy, these can serve you rather than hinder you. It all depends on the story you tell yourself about what they mean. Acting confident, embodying the person you want to become. There is a fascinating loop between how we feel and how we act. Most people assume the direction runs only one way. We feel confident, therefore we act confidently. But the relationship actually runs in both directions. When we act confidently, even if we do not initially feel confident, our feelings begin to catch up with our actions. This is the principle behind fake it till you make it, though that phrase does not quite capture the depth of what is actually happening. You are not faking anything. You are embodying confidence until it becomes genuine. The psychology behind this involves several interconnected mechanisms. First, there is the simple fact that your brain takes cues from your body. When you stand tall, make eye contact, and speak clearly, your brain receives signals that you are in a confident, dominant state. This triggers neurochemical responses that actually make you feel more confident. The physical posture creates the internal emotional state. Research on power posing has demonstrated this dramatically. When people hold expansive, open postures for just 2 minutes, standing tall with arms raised or spread wide, measurable changes occur. Testosterone, associated with confidence and dominance, increases. Cortisol, associated with stress and anxiety, decreases. The body is not just reflecting confidence, it is creating it through posture alone. Beyond the neurochemical effects, there is also social feedback. When you act confident, other people respond to you as if you are confident. They treat you with more respect, listen to you more seriously, and defer to you more readily. This positive social feedback then reinforces your confidence, creating an upward spiral. You act confident, others treat you as confident. You feel more confident, you act even more confidently, and so on. The key to acting confident effectively is understanding the specific behaviors that signal confidence. These are not mysterious or difficult. They are observable, learnable behaviors that anyone can practice. The most fundamental is posture. Confident people stand and sit tall, with shoulders back and spine straight. They take up space rather than making themselves small. They do not slouch or hunch. Eye contact is equally important. Confident people maintain steady eye contact during conversations. They do not stare aggressively, but they do not constantly look away either. They meet others' eyes naturally and comfortably, signaling that they have nothing to hide and are comfortable being seen. This one behavior alone dramatically affects how others perceive you. Speech patterns reveal confidence or its absence. Confident people speak at a measured pace, neither rushing anxiously nor dragging slowly. They avoid filler words like like, and you know that signal uncertainty and discomfort. They pause, deliberately, rather than filling every silence with nervous sound. They speak loudly enough to be easily heard without shouting. The content of speech matters too. Confident people make declarative statements, rather than constantly hedging with qualifiers. They say we should do this rather than, I think maybe we could possibly consider doing this. They own their opinions and ideas without apologetic language that undermines their message before anyone else can. Movement and gesture also convey confidence. Confident people move deliberately and smoothly, rather than with nervous, jerky movements. Their gestures are purposeful and controlled. They do not fidget with their hands, tap their feet anxiously, or engage in other nervous behaviors that signal discomfort and uncertainty. In professional settings, acting confident transforms how you are perceived and how you progress. Job interviews are perhaps the most obvious application. Candidates who demonstrate confident body language, steady eye contact, clear speech, and ownership of their accomplishments get offers more frequently than equally qualified candidates who appear nervous and uncertain, even when that nervousness is simply a manifestation of caring about the opportunity. Presentations and public speaking benefit enormously from embodied confidence. Even if you feel terrified inside, standing tall, making eye contact with the audience, speaking clearly and without apology, and moving purposefully across the stage creates the appearance of confidence. And as you maintain these behaviors, the internal experience of confidence begins to grow. The audience's positive response further reinforces it. Leadership requires confidence, or at least the appearance of it. Teams need to believe their leader knows where they are going and can get them there. Leaders who embody confidence through their bearing, communication, and decision-making inspire followership. This does not mean faking certainty when you genuinely do not know something. It means projecting calm assurance that you will figure things out, that challenges can be overcome, that the team is capable. In sales and persuasion, confident presentation dramatically increases effectiveness. People buy from and agree with those who seem certain and assured. If you present your product or idea hesitantly, with apologetic language and uncertain body language, people doubt its value. If you present with conviction and confidence, people are much more likely to be persuaded. Social situations become easier when you act confident, even if you do not feel it initially. Walking into a party or networking event with good posture, making eye contact, introducing yourself clearly and firmly. These behaviors make you approachable and attractive to others. They signal that you are comfortable and that interacting with you will be positive rather than awkward. Dating and romantic interactions are heavily influenced by confidence. Confident presentation, not arrogance, but genuine self-assurance, is widely attractive across cultures and contexts. When you act confident, you signal that you value yourself, which makes others more likely to value you as well. Desperation and insecurity, expressed through body language and communication patterns, have the opposite effect. However, there is an important distinction between confidence and arrogance. Confidence involves secure self-assurance without needing to diminish others. Arrogance involves elevating yourself by putting others down, often arising from underlying insecurity. Truly confident people can acknowledge others' strengths and achievements without feeling threatened. They can admit what they do not know without losing their sense of competence. The practice of acting confident works best when it is grounded in genuine competence and preparation. If you have no idea what you are talking about and you are simply bluffing with confident presentation, people eventually see through it. But if you actually have knowledge and ability, and you present it confidently rather than apologetically, you give your genuine competence the platform it deserves. One powerful technique is visualization combined with physical practice. Before important events, mentally rehearse not just what you will say, but how you will hold yourself, how you will move, how you will speak. Then physically practice these confident behaviors. Stand in front of a mirror and practice confident posture and eye contact. Rehearse your presentation or pitch with confident vocal patterns and gestures. Another technique is to identify people you consider genuinely confident and observe their specific behaviors. How do they enter a room? How do they greet people? How do they speak and move? You are not trying to imitate them exactly, but you can learn from their behavioral patterns and adapt them to your own style. The fake it till you make it approach works because confidence is both a feeling and a set of behaviors. By practicing the behaviors consistently, even when you do not initially feel confident, you eventually develop the feeling. The internal experience catches up to the external presentation. What started as acting becomes genuine over time. This has profound implications for personal development. You do not have to wait until you feel confident to act confidently. You can start acting confident now, and the feeling will develop through practice and positive reinforcement. Every time you embody confidence and experience a positive outcome, your genuine confidence grows. Over time, confident behavior becomes automatic, natural, genuinely felt. For people struggling with social anxiety or lack of self-confidence, this principle offers hope. You are not stuck waiting for some magical internal transformation before you can engage confidently with the world. You can start with behavior, with how you hold yourself and communicate, and the internal experience will follow. The transformation happens from the outside in as much as from the inside out. Positive association. Human memory and emotion work in interesting ways. We do not just remember events and facts. We remember how we felt during those events. And those emotional memories become associated with the people, places, and things that were present. Understanding this principle of positive association allows you to strategically position yourself to be linked with positive experiences and emotions in others' minds, creating relationships and opportunities that might not otherwise exist. The mechanism is straightforward. When you consistently show up during someone's positive experiences, when you are present during their moments of joy, laughter, success, and celebration, your brain becomes associated with those positive feelings. The association happens largely outside conscious awareness. The person does not explicitly think this person causes my good feelings, but on a subconscious level, the connection is made. Being around you feels good because your presence has been paired repeatedly with positive emotional states. This principle explains why people who make us laugh become so attractive to us. The laughter itself feels good, releases endorphins, creates positive emotional states. When a particular person consistently makes us laugh, they become associated with those good feelings. We want to be around them more because being around them has been repeatedly paired with feeling good. The same applies to any positive emotion. If you are consistently present during someone's moments of accomplishment, celebrating their successes, acknowledging their achievements, you become associated with feelings of pride and validation. If you are present during moments of relief after stress, you become associated with that wonderful feeling of tension release. If you share experiences of beauty, adventure, or discovery, you become associated with those positive states. Think about how this works in professional relationships. Colleagues who share lunch breaks filled with laughter and interesting conversation become positively associated with each other. The meal itself is pleasant, the conversation enjoyable, and the people present become linked with those positive feelings. This creates workplace relationships that go beyond mere professional courtesy. Sales professionals understand this instinctively. The most effective salespeople are not those who simply pitch products. They are those who create positive experiences during the sales interaction. They make you laugh, put you at ease, make the process enjoyable. When you think about buying from them, you recall the positive feelings of the interaction, not just the product features. This positive association makes you more likely to buy and to return for future purchases. In dating and romantic relationships, positive association is fundamental. Early relationship stages often involve deliberately creating positive shared experiences, fun dates, interesting activities, laughter, and adventure. These experiences create strong positive associations with each other. The relationship itself becomes linked with feeling good, which creates powerful motivation to maintain and deepen it. However, the principle works in reverse too, which is why it is crucial to understand fully. If you are consistently present during someone's negative experiences, if you always show up with bad news, complaints, or during their moments of stress and suffering, you can become associated with negative feelings. Even if you are trying to help, if your presence is always paired with difficulty, the association can become problematic. This is sometimes called the messenger effect. People who deliver bad news consistently become associated with that bad news. even when they have nothing to do with causing it. This is why some roles, like human resources professionals who conduct layoffs or managers who must deliver frequent criticism, can struggle to build positive relationships despite their best intentions. Understanding this means being strategic about when and how you show up in others' lives. Obviously, you cannot only appear during good times and disappear during difficulties. That would make you a fair-weather friend. But you can ensure that your interactions include significant positive experiences alongside any necessary difficult conversations or support through challenges. In leadership, this principle is particularly important. Leaders who only interact with their teams during problems or crises risk becoming associated exclusively with stress and difficulty. Effective leaders ensure they also show up during celebrations, successes, and positive moments. They make a point to share in joy and accomplishment, not just to manage problems. The principle also explains why shared positive experiences are so important in team building. When teams engage in enjoyable activities together outside normal work contexts, team members become positively associated with each other. The positive emotions of the shared experience create bonds that carry over into work relationships. The team retreat filled with laughter and connection makes returning to work together more pleasant, because team members are now positively associated with each other. In families, creating positive shared experiences is crucial for maintaining strong relationships. Families that only interact during stressful times, difficult conversations, or obligatory events risk having family members become associated with stress and obligation. Families that deliberately create fun traditions, celebratory gatherings, and enjoyable shared activities build positive associations that strengthen bonds. Parents can apply this principle consciously. If you only engage deeply with your children during homework help, discipline, or problem solving, you risk becoming associated primarily with stress and difficulty. Deliberately creating fun, playful, enjoyable interactions ensures that you are also strongly associated with positive feelings, strengthening the parent-child bond. In networking and professional relationship building, understanding positive association guides strategy. You want to connect with people during positive contexts, industry celebrations, successful project completions, social events. These positive contexts create positive associations with you. Approaching people only when you need something from them creates associations with obligation and taking, rather than giving and positive experience. The timing of your presence matters too. Being among the first to celebrate someone's good news, to congratulate their achievement, to acknowledge their success, creates stronger positive association than showing up late or reluctantly. Your enthusiasm and genuine pleasure in their positive experience bonds you to that experience in their memory. One practical application is in customer service and client relations. If your only contact with clients is when something has gone wrong, you become associated with problems. Proactively reaching out during smooth periods, checking in when things are going well, sharing relevant positive information. These interactions create positive associations that buffer against the inevitable times when problems do arise. The principle also applies to physical spaces and environments. Restaurants, cafes, or venues where people consistently have positive experiences become favored destinations. The location itself becomes positively associated with good feelings. This is why businesses invest heavily in creating positive experiences beyond just their core product or service. They understand that positive association drives repeat business. Understanding positive association means understanding that feelings matter more than logic in relationship formation. People remember how you made them feel more than what you specifically said or did. By consistently showing up in positive contexts, by bringing positive energy, by celebrating others' joys, and by creating pleasant interactions, you become someone people want to be around because being around you is associated with feeling good. This is not manipulation if your positive presence is genuine. It is simply understanding human psychology and using that understanding to build authentic relationships. People naturally gravitate toward those associated with positive feelings. By being authentically positive, supportive, and present during good times, you create relationships that are mutually beneficial and genuinely rewarding for everyone involved. The rule of 3. The magic number for human memory, has particular patterns and preferences. Among the most consistent is our affinity for things that come in threes. Information presented or repeated 3 times is remembered far better than information presented once or twice, or even 4 or 5 times. This is called the rule of 3, and it appears across cultures, throughout history, and in virtually every domain of communication and memory. Understanding and applying this principle dramatically improves how effectively your messages stick in people's minds. The psychology behind the rule of 3 involves several factors. 3 is the minimum number needed to establish a pattern. 1 instance is singular, 2 instances create pairing, but 3 instances establish a recognizable pattern that the brain latches onto. Patterns are easier to remember than isolated pieces of information, because the brain naturally seeks and recognizes patterns as a way of efficiently organizing information. 3 is also small enough to be manageable. Our working memory can typically hold about 7 items, but 3 is comfortably within that limit with room to spare. When you present 3 key points, 3 examples, or 3 steps, people can hold all of them in mind simultaneously. 4 or more often exceeds comfortable working memory for many people, especially if the items are complex. There is also something aesthetically pleasing about 3. It feels balanced and complete. 2 feels incomplete, waiting for resolution. 4 feels excessive, starting to drag. 3 hits a sweet spot of completeness without excess. This aesthetic preference appears in storytelling, design, music, and virtually every form of human creativity. In presentations and speeches, the rule of 3 is fundamental. Your presentation should have 3 main points. Within each main point, you might have 3 supporting examples. Your conclusion should reiterate those 3 main points. This structure makes your message clear, organized, and memorable. Audiences can follow and retain your argument because the 3-part structure provides a framework. Think about famous speeches and how often they employ the rule of 3. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Blood, sweat, and tears. These phrases are memorable partly because of their content, but also because of their 3-part structure. The rhythm and completeness of 3 makes them stick in memory. In marketing and branding, the rule of 3 appears constantly. Slogans often come in 3s. Just Do It repeats in 3 syllables with 3 distinct words: snap, crackle, pop, stop, drop, and roll. The 3-part structure makes these phrases catchy and memorable, more likely to be recalled when needed. Product features are often presented in 3s. This phone is fast, beautiful, and affordable. This software is powerful, intuitive, and secure. Even when products have more than 3 features, marketing often highlights 3 key ones because that is what audiences can readily remember and repeat to others. In writing, whether fiction or non-fiction, the rule of 3 creates rhythm and memorability. Describing something with 3 adjectives feels complete. Tall, dark, and handsome. Fast, furious, and fun. The 3-part structure has a natural cadence that single or double adjectives lack. Comedy and storytelling rely heavily on the rule of 3. Jokes often follow a pattern where the first 2 instances set up expectation, and the third delivers the unexpected twist that creates humor. 3 examples in a story feel complete, establishing pattern enough to feel thorough without becoming repetitive or boring. In teaching and instruction, the rule of 3 improves retention. When teaching a concept, present it 3 times in different ways. First, explain it verbally. Second, show it visually or through example. Third, have students apply it themselves. This 3-fold exposure, each in a different modality, creates multiple memory traces that reinforce learning. Step-by-step instructions work best when they can be simplified to 3 main steps. Even if the actual process has more steps, grouping them into 3 major phases makes the process feel manageable and easy to remember. People are more likely to follow through with 3 steps than with 7, even if those 7 steps take the same total time and effort. In meetings and project planning, organizing initiatives into 3 phases or 3 priorities creates clarity. When everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. But when you can articulate the 3 most important goals, people can remember and focus on them. This constraint forces essential prioritization that benefits execution. The rule of 3 works in visual design as well. Designers often use the rule of thirds in composition, dividing space into 3 sections horizontally and vertically. Visual elements arranged in groups of 3 feel balanced and pleasing to the eye. This is not arbitrary. It reflects how our visual system naturally organizes and processes information. In negotiation and persuasion, Presenting 3 reasons for your position is more effective than presenting 1, 2, or many more. 1 reason can seem weak or insufficient. 2 reasons feel preliminary, like you are still building your case. 3 reasons feel complete and well considered. More than 3 often seem like you are padding your argument or desperate to convince. Personal goal setting benefits from the rule of 3. Instead of vague resolutions or overwhelming lists of everything you want to change, identify 3 specific goals. This makes the goals feel achievable and memorable. You can focus genuine effort on 3 targets, whereas 10 targets scatter your attention too thinly. In email and written communication, organizing your message into 3 main points increases the likelihood that your message is read, understood, and remembered. Busy recipients can quickly grasp 3 key ideas. More than 3, and your message becomes a wall of text that many people will skim or ignore. Product offers and choices also follow the rule of 3 effectively. Presenting 3 options, perhaps good, better, best, helps people make decisions. 1 option offers no choice. 2 options force a binary decision that can feel limiting. 3 options provide choice without overwhelming. More than 3 options paradoxically makes decisions harder, leading to decision paralysis. The repetition aspect of the rule of 3 is equally important. To make something memorable, say it 3 times. Once at the beginning to introduce it, once in the middle to develop it, and once at the end to reinforce it. This triple exposure embeds the information in memory far more effectively than single exposure. However, the 3 repetitions should not be identical. The best approach varies the context or framing each time while maintaining the core message. In the introduction, you state what you will tell them. In the middle, you tell them with examples and details. In the conclusion, you tell them what you told them with slightly different framing. The variation prevents boredom, while the repetition ensures retention. Understanding the rule of 3 means respecting the limitations and patterns of human memory. We cannot remember everything, but we can remember 3 things. We respond to patterns, and 3 is the minimum pattern. By organizing your communication, your goals, your priorities, and your messaging around the number 3, you work with human cognition rather than against it. Your messages stick, your ideas spread, and your communication becomes dramatically more effective through this simple, ancient principle. The power of open body language communication is far more than words. In fact, research suggests that the majority of emotional content in face-to-face communication comes not from what we say, but from how we say it, and most importantly, from our body language. Open body language, characterized by uncrossed arms, facing people directly, relaxed posture, and expansive presence creates trust, signals receptiveness, and makes you appear approachable and confident. Understanding and practicing open body language transforms your relationships and effectiveness in virtually every social context. The psychology behind body language goes deep into evolutionary history. Before language evolved, our ancestors communicated entirely through physical signals. Even after language developed, these nonverbal signals remained primary, carrying emotional and relational information that words often cannot convey. We are wired to read body language instinctively, often processing these signals subconsciously before we even register the words being spoken. Open body language signals safety and welcome. When you face someone directly with arms uncrossed and posture relaxed, you are physically signaling that you are not a threat and that you are receptive to interaction. Conversely, crossed arms, turned away body orientation, and tense posture signal defensiveness, discomfort, or hostility, even when your words are friendly. The most fundamental element of open body language is arm position. Crossed arms create a physical barrier between you and others. While people cross their arms for many reasons, including simple comfort, the gesture universally reads as closed off or defensive. To signal openness, keep your arms relaxed at your sides, or use them naturally in conversation through gestures, or rest them openly on armrests or tables. This removes the physical barrier and signals receptiveness. Facing people directly with your torso oriented toward them signals engagement and respect. When you stand or sit with your body angled away, even if your head is turned toward them, you signal divided attention or desire to leave. Full frontal orientation, while not aggressive staring, signals that you are fully present and engaged in the interaction. Posture matters significantly. Slouched, hunched posture signals low energy, insecurity, or depression. Upright but relaxed posture signals confidence and openness. The key is finding the balance between rigid military straightness, which can seem aggressive or uncomfortable, and collapsed slouching, which signals defeat or disinterest. Imagine a string gently pulling the crown of your head upward, lengthening your spine while keeping everything relaxed. Personal space and proximity also communicate. Standing or sitting too close can feel aggressive or invasive. Too far away signals discomfort or disinterest. Respecting appropriate personal space while not excessively distancing yourself strikes the right balance. Cultural norms around personal space vary significantly, so awareness of context is important. Eye contact falls under the umbrella of open body language. As discussed earlier, appropriate eye contact signals confidence and engagement. However, it must be balanced. Constant, unblinking staring feels aggressive. Frequent looking away feels evasive or uncomfortable. Natural eye contact that shifts occasionally but returns regularly feels open and engaged. Facial expressions are crucial components of open body language. A genuine smile signals warmth and approachability. A tense jaw or furrowed brow signals stress or anger, even if your words are neutral. Relaxed facial muscles with appropriate expressions that match your words create congruence that people trust. Mismatched body language, where your face or posture contradicts your words, creates confusion and reduces trust. Hand gestures, when open and expansive, signal confidence and openness. Talking with your hands, using palms-up gestures, spreading your arms to emphasize points. All of these create a sense of openness and energy. Hands hidden in pockets behind your back or folded tightly signal closure or discomfort. Visible, active hands create engagement. In professional settings, open body language dramatically affects how you are perceived. In job interviews, candidates with open posture, good eye contact, and relaxed engagement appear more confident and competent than those with closed, defensive postures, regardless of their actual qualifications. Interviewers make snap judgments based largely on body language, and those judgments influence hiring decisions. Leadership requires open body language. Leaders who physically close themselves off behind desks, cross their arms frequently, or avoid eye contact create distance and reduce trust. Leaders who move openly among their teams, maintain relaxed posture, and physically orient toward people. When speaking with them, create accessibility and connection that strengthens their leadership. In negotiations and sales, open body language signals honesty and confidence. When presenting your position or product, open gestures and relaxed posture signal that you have nothing to hide and believe in what you are saying. Closed, defensive postures signal that even you doubt your position, undermining your persuasiveness. Conflict resolution depends heavily on open body language. When addressing disagreements or difficult topics, maintaining open posture despite discomfort signals willingness to engage and resolve issues. If you physically close off, crossing arms, or turning away, you signal that you are defensive and unwilling to truly consider the other perspective. This escalates conflict rather than resolving it. In social situations, open body language makes you approachable. At parties or networking events, people with open, relaxed posture attract others naturally. They seem friendly and safe to approach. People with closed, defensive postures repel others, even if they actually desire connection. Your body language sends invitation or warning before you even speak. Teaching and presenting benefit from open, expansive body language. Teachers or speakers who move freely, use open gestures, and maintain relaxed presence engage audiences more effectively than those who hide behind podiums, minimize movement, or display closed postures. Open body language signals confidence and creates connection with the audience. Cultural awareness is essential when working with body language. Norms around appropriate eye contact, personal space, touch, and gesture vary significantly across cultures. What signals openness in one culture might signal aggression or disrespect in another. When working across cultures, observing and adapting to local norms while maintaining genuine warmth is key. One powerful way to develop more open body language is through practice and awareness. Video record yourself in conversations or presentations. Watch without sound and notice your posture, gestures, and overall physical presence. Are you open and expansive or closed and contracted? This awareness alone often leads to natural improvement. Another technique is conscious practice in low-stakes situations. When talking with friends or family, deliberately practice open posture, uncrossed arms, direct orientation, Notice how it feels and how others respond. As it becomes more natural in comfortable settings, it becomes easier to maintain in higher stakes situations. Understanding open body language ultimately means recognizing that your body constantly communicates, whether you intend it to or not. People read your physical signals instinctively and respond to them before they consciously process your words. By cultivating genuinely open, relaxed body language, you make yourself more approachable, more trustworthy, and more effective in every human interaction. The transformation is not just in how others see you, but in how you actually feel and engage with the world. Avoiding unnecessary corrections. In virtually every conversation, small inaccuracies and minor mistakes occur. Someone slightly misremembers a date, gets a name slightly wrong, or states a fact that is not quite accurate. The natural impulse, especially for detail-oriented or knowledgeable people, is to immediately correct these errors. However, this impulse, while coming from a desire for accuracy, often damages rapport and disrupts connection far more than the small inaccuracy warrants. Learning when to let minor mistakes go, choosing connection over being right, is one of the most valuable communication skills you can develop. The psychology behind why corrections damage rapport is straightforward. When you correct someone, especially on something minor or tangential to the main point, several things happen psychologically. First, you interrupt the flow of conversation. The person was building momentum, sharing a story or idea, and suddenly they must stop and defend or adjust their statement. This disruption breaks connection and makes continuing difficult. Second, correction implies superiority. Even gentle correction sends the message, "I know better than you." For many people, this triggers defensiveness or embarrassment. They feel foolish or put down, even if you had no intention of making them feel that way. This negative feeling becomes associated with talking to you, making them less likely to engage openly in future interactions. Third, frequent correction trains people to be careful and guarded around you rather than open and spontaneous. If they know you will jump on every small inaccuracy, they start monitoring everything they say, double-checking facts in their head before speaking. This caution kills spontaneity and authentic connection. Conversations become stiff and effortful rather than flowing naturally. The key is distinguishing between corrections that matter and corrections that do not. If someone is about to make an important decision based on incorrect information, correction is appropriate and helpful. If someone's inaccuracy could harm themselves or others, correction is necessary. If you are in a professional context where accuracy is crucial, such as legal or medical settings, correction is part of your responsibility. But if someone is telling a story about a vacation, and they say it was in July when you know it was actually in June, does correcting them improve the conversation or the relationship? Almost never. The specific month is irrelevant to the story they are telling and to the connection you are building. Correcting it serves only to demonstrate your superior memory while disrupting their narrative and potentially embarrassing them. Similarly, if someone refers to an actor or author by a slightly wrong name, and everyone understands who they mean, correction adds nothing valuable. It only interrupts and potentially embarrasses. Unless the error creates genuine confusion that prevents understanding, letting it pass preserves flow and connection. This principle is particularly important in personal relationships. Partners, family members, and close friends tell stories and share thoughts constantly. If one person habitually corrects the minor inaccuracies of others, the relationship suffers. The corrected person begins to feel judged, stupid, or like they cannot speak freely. Over time, they share less, and the relationship becomes more distant. In professional settings, unnecessary corrections also cause problems. If you are in a meeting and a colleague makes a minor factual error that does not affect the substance of their argument or proposal, interrupting to correct them can make you look pedantic and undermine their credibility for no good reason. It damages your relationship with that colleague and makes others in the meeting view you as difficult or overly critical. The alternative to immediate correction is letting minor errors pass, staying focused on the main point and the connection. If the error genuinely matters, you can find a gentle, private way to address it later. "Hey, this is really minor, but I wanted to mention that the conference you were thinking of was actually in June, not July, in case that affects any planning." This approach preserves public dignity while still providing necessary information. Some people struggle with letting inaccuracies pass because they deeply value truth and accuracy. They feel that allowing errors to stand unchallenged is somehow endorsing falsehood. But this misunderstands the purpose of casual conversation, which is primarily about connection and understanding, not creating a permanent record of perfect accuracy. In casual contexts, approximate truth and mutual understanding matter far more than perfect accuracy on every detail. Learning to resist the correction impulse requires recognizing it when it arises and consciously choosing connection over correction. When you notice an error and feel the urge to correct it, pause and ask yourself, does this error actually matter? Will correcting it improve understanding or just satisfy my need to be right? Is this the right time and place for correction? More often than not, the answer leads to letting it pass. This does not mean never correcting anyone or allowing major misconceptions to persist. It means being strategic and thoughtful about when correction serves the relationship and when it damages it. Choose your corrections carefully, reserving them for times when they genuinely add value rather than just demonstrating your knowledge. Understanding this principle reveals something deeper about effective communication. The goal of most conversation is not perfect information exchange. It is connection, understanding, relationship building. Sometimes a story that is emotionally true but factually imperfect communicates more and connects better than an accurate but lifeless recitation of verified facts. Prioritizing the emotional truth and the connection over perfect factual accuracy often leads to better outcomes and stronger relationships. This approach transforms you from someone people are careful around into someone people feel comfortable with. They can speak freely, knowing you will engage with the substance of what they are saying rather than pouncing on minor imperfections. This comfort creates space for more authentic, more meaningful interaction. And paradoxically, when you demonstrate that you care more about understanding them than about being right, people often become more receptive to corrections when they do matter, because they trust that your corrections come from genuine helpfulness rather than ego or one-upmanship.